when Bai Huanqing blissfully transmigrated to the mermaid world. Envisioning her graceful fishtail, fate dealt her a cruel blow. She became a disheveled otter, battered by waves. She expected a disastrous beginning, but surprisingly, the mermaids of this world were ardent fans of otters. By live streaming her face rubbing and cuteness, she became a mermaid celebrity. Life was good, but peace was short-lived before the reproduction problem. The calm days didn't last, and Wang King discovered with horror that the entire species was reenacting a, quote, planet Earth moment. Even more outrageous, 4 muscular otters suddenly appeared from the seaweed, like hungry wolves spotting prey, quickly surrounding her. Seeing this, Bai Huanqing immediately turned and fled desperately. What's wrong with these males? She's just a pup. They don't even spare pups. Thus, a strange scene unfolded on the sea. 4 muscular otters furiously chasing a lone little otter. Bai Huanqing swam forward with all her might, desperately kicking her hind legs, trying to go faster. After swimming for who knows how long, Bai Huanqing slowly left the seaweed area, and the muscular otters behind her disappeared. At this moment, the sky was gray, casting a dull, dark hue over the sea. Nothing was there but the waves, still tirelessly rising and falling. Bai Huanqing pressed her palms to her face, rubbing them in circles to warm herself, and let out a few weak cries. But her soft sounds were quickly swallowed by the vast ocean, disappearing without a trace. She was lost, completely unaware of how to get back. The little otter lay confused on the water, tired, hungry, and cold. Mechanically, she rubbed her cheeks with her paws. Although she'd only been living as an otter for a few days, she couldn't resist her body's instinctive urge to groom herself, licking her fur, rubbing her face, and cleaning her belly. Bai Huanqing was so dizzy with hunger that when a fish passed by, she lunged at it. Unfortunately, she missed. The fish was faster than she expected. She lunged several times, but always came back empty-handed, while the fish leisurely circled her, as if luring her. Bai Huanqing's saliva flowed uncontrollably from her eyes, the pain of delicious food being right in front of her, yet out of reach. Who could understand? She silently wiped away tears, then flipped over and dived back into the water, heading straight for the seabed. She searched among the underwater rocks, and finally, just as despair was setting in, she touched some clams, no bigger than her palm. Although she didn't know much about otters, the moment she saw these, Bai Huanqing knew she could eat them. Overjoyed, she hugged the food and floated back to the surface, piling all the translucent clams on her belly, eager to devour them one by one. But the moment she took a bite, Bai Huanqing covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. They were a bit hard, and one bite almost broke her teeth. Bai Huanqing rubbed her paws against her mouth, and suddenly, inspiration struck. She grabbed 2 clamshells, put them together, and started knocking them against each other. 3 minutes later, she finally ate her first bite of food for the day. However, just as she was enjoying her meal with a satisfied expression, a black figure swam out from a cave beneath a distant white ice mountain. A silvery black fishtail, shimmering in the water, flicked, and its gaze fell upon the feeding otter. At this point, Bai Huanqing had finished the food in her hand and was preparing to dive back down to hunt. After all, a few palm-sized clams weren't nearly enough to fill her up. She felt nothing after eating them, only slightly alleviating her hunger. Moreover, hunting at night was more difficult. She had to fill herself before it got completely dark. Before re-entering the water, she looked up at her surroundings with some confusion. The sea was still vast, with surging waves, but she couldn't shake the feeling that some animal was watching her. She tilted her head and listened carefully, then twitched her nose to sniff. There was only the cold, heart-chilling scent of the ocean, and the faint splashing sounds of fish breaking the surface. Bai Huanqing felt a renewed sense of caution, but she had no strength left to escape. She could only rub her still hungry stomach, flip over, and proceed back into the water. To get enough food, she went to a deeper area this time. Perhaps other otters hadn't visited here, as there were quite a few translucent clams, and also some other small shellfish, no bigger than her palm. Suddenly discovering so much food, Bai Huanqing's lips curved in excitement. She used one small paw to firmly secure the food against her chest, while her other paw greedily continued to scoop up more, stopping only when one fell out of her embrace. She bit down on the escaping clam, swung her rear, and quickly returned to the surface. By now, it was completely dark. Nothing was visible at night, and clouds still blanketed the sky. When she first transmigrated and saw such a vast sea, Bai Huanqing was also a little frightened. But back then, there was another embrace holding her tightly. Now, not only was her mother gone, but she couldn't even see any of her kind. Fortunately, hunger overcame all fear. Her hesitation lasted only a second. She piled all the food on her chest and belly and began to enjoy it with relish. But even after all the food was consumed, she was only 3 or 4/10 full. Bai Huanqing rubbed her face while pondering whether she could last until tomorrow morning. Ultimately, she decided to sleep first. She neatly placed her furry paws on her belly, her fur gently swaying with the water. Bai Huanqing drifted into dreamland. As she slept, a shadow that had been observing from afar suddenly approached. Its speed was swift, yet it caused no ripple or sound. It extended a sharp claw, gently nearing the otter's neck. In just a split second, the claw tip could penetrate the fur and sever the delicate blood vessels beneath. But the claws stopped abruptly upon touching the fur. Otters aren't uniform in color. They can be white, gray, brown, or black, but Bai Huanqing's fur was pure white. Every day, following her otter instincts, she kept herself immaculately clean, with no food scraps or tangles in her fur, making it smooth and soft. The fine hairs on her neck felt even softer. The scale-covered claw was enveloped by these hairs before it could pierce the neck. The owner of the claw seemed to feel troubled, involuntarily retracting the claw tip and gently rubbing the fur that almost completely enclosed its palm with the back of its hand. However, the thumb claw tip wasn't fully retracted, accidentally clipping off a patch of fur. The claw's owner guiltily flicked its tail, abruptly withdrawing its hand and leaning back, carrying away the clipped fur. This movement quickly startled the sleeping Bai Huanqing. Her arm shot up and her eyes snapped open, looking around warily, but there was no anomaly. Bai Huanqing rubbed her palm on her cheek, slightly warming it, then moved it to her nose and rubbed again. The feeling was quite subtle. If she were human right now, encountering such a gentle otter would surely make her ecstatic, but if she had no surprises, she wondered how long it would be until dawn. Bai Huanqing closed her eyes, preparing to continue sleeping, but before drifting off, she looked around again by the faint starlight. This time, she wasn't looking for suspicious things, but at the ice mountain. Before she fell asleep, she was south of the ice mountain, with her back to it. Now, squinting carefully, she realized her tail was pointing towards the ice mountain, and the distance to the mountain seemed to have grown. This meant that while she was sleeping, she had been drifting with the waves. If she hadn't woken up midway, she might have drifted to who knows where by morning. Suddenly, she recalled scenes of spending nights with her mother in the colony. Bai Huanqing then understood why their living area had so much seaweed, and why otters like to entangle themselves in seaweed. It was to keep their bodies from drifting away. But now, in this area, there were no islands or seaweed, nothing to hold her body in place. She either didn't sleep, or she had to accept reality and drift with the currents. Bai Huanqing sighed and plunged back into the water. When Bai Huanqing blissfully transmigrated to the mermaid world, envisioning her graceful fishtail, fate dealt her a cruel blow. She became a disheveled otter, battered by waves. She expected a disastrous beginning, but surprisingly, the mermaids of this world were ardent fans of otters. An ethereal, transparent screen materialized before her. Bai Huanqing stared, bewildered, unable to process what was happening. Was she hallucinating? It looked uncannily like the holographic displays from sci-fi movies. Tentatively, she extended a paw, which passed straight through the screen. Seeing this, she swam to the side, but the screen stubbornly followed her. Bai Huanqing's mind raced. Drawing on years of novel reading experience, she deduced, could I have transmigrated into a world that isn't reality? She experimented with the screen for a long time, but couldn't find a button to bring up a game panel. She had no idea how to control this strange display. Recalling the events leading up to its appearance, she tentatively slapped a rock with her paw. Magically, the screen vanished. It seems the trick isn't with the rock, but with my belly, she mused. Bai Huanqing dropped the rock, her gaze fixed on her underside. Inch by inch, she parted the fur on her belly, meticulously searching. Alas, her neck began to ache, and she found nothing suspicious. Feeling a bit dejected, she unconsciously scratched her side. Whoosh! The vanished screen reappeared. Bai Huanqing's eyes widened. After a moment, she slowly moved her claw tip, exploring back and forth. She seemed to touch a specific spot, and the screen instantly disappeared. She tried this repeatedly, the screen appearing and vanishing, vanishing and appearing. Puzzled, Bai Huanqing thought, I don't even have a system. How could I have such high-tech gadgetry on me? Is my new body fake? Am I actually some kind of sea otter-shaped robot with just an animal skin covering a machine inside? Worried, she quickly put a paw in her mouth, wiggled her teeth, and then took a gulp of cold, salty seawater. Feeling the temperature and taste in her mouth, she finally relaxed, certain she was a real animal, not a robot. Bai Huanqing let out a sigh of relief and stared at the screen, attempting to control it. Her paw touching it yielded no response, so it was highly likely voice-controlled. She opened her mouth and let out a series of yin-yin-ah sounds. A sea otter's voice is slightly thin, almost like a whine, but this coyness had no effect on the screen. Bai Huanqing was exhausted from her efforts. She sighed, wanting to turn it off. However, before she could manually close it, the screen disappeared on its own. Bai Huanqing felt like she'd found the key to closing it. She thought, the command to open is conveyed through thought. Sure enough, as her thoughts shifted, the screen reappeared. Excited, Bai Huanqing spun around in the water. This thing was like a portable phone or computer. The most crucial question now was whether it had an internet connection and could be used. Forcing herself to calm down, Bai Huanqing gave the screen another command. She had countless things she wanted to know. Where was this place? Were there humans? What was her location? And so on. But she didn't know the control commands, so she could only try mobile phone commands one by one. Map, open map, search map. Still no response. Bai Huanqing pondered for a while, pulling at her fur. Suddenly, she changed the command to open nautical chart. This time, it finally worked. The previously blank screen instantly transformed. The screen vanished, and a miniature sea appeared before her. She could see that she was currently in a corner of this sea, marked by a red dot. However, the map showed a very small area, only her immediate surroundings. Anything further away was not visible. World nautical chart, she commanded. Whoosh! The small sea projection instantly expanded into a massive blue light image, enveloping her entirely. She was like an ant, occupying a corner of the light image. After clearly seeing the entire nautical chart, Bai Huanqing gasped. The entire nautical chart formed a planetary shape, and this blue planet bore an 80% resemblance to Earth. The only difference was that this planet was 99% ocean. The 1% of land was concentrated in one area, occupying a very inconspicuous corner of the planet. Bai Huanqing was currently in a very northern part of the planet. Sea otters live in cold waters, so she was just closer to the pole. No wonder she hadn't seen any land. The only landmass was tens of thousands of miles away. It would take months of swimming to reach it. However, on a planet entirely covered in water, if there were humans, they would probably have evolved tails and gills, becoming merfolk, she speculated. She then tried other keywords one by one: person, human, merfolk. Finally, the keyword became mermaid. The map transformed into a popular science interface, similar to a Wikipedia page. The interface thoughtfully displayed no text, but rather dynamic video-like presentations accompanied by narration. Popular science video was very, very long. The more Bai Huanqing listened, the uglier her expression became. By the end, she couldn't help but thrash her front paws and hind claws against the water, letting out a high-pitched ying-ying sound towards the ocean for a long time. She understood now. This was a mermaid world. A mermaid world with a highly developed technological civilization and a population of over 4 billion merfolk. She had transmigrated into a mermaid world, but she hadn't become a mermaid. She had become a sea otter that had almost been forced to mate by a male sea otter, and was constantly struggling to find food. Bai Huanqing bitterly cursed the heavens 108 times. The video not only showed her the vast, beautiful, and lively underwater cities of the merfolk, but also let her see the breathtakingly beautiful merfolk themselves. Merfolk looked very similar to humans, just like the merfolk from human fantasies. Human torsos, fish tails, long hair like seaweed, colorful scales shimmering with brilliant luster, and facial features that rivaled celebrities, even 10 or 100 times more beautiful. Bai Huanqing looked at the stunning merfolk on the screen, then at herself. Black paws and a furry belly. She couldn't help but shed tears. It's too hard. It's really too hard. Why is it so cruel? They let me transmigrate into a world with 4 billion beings. I could have become a mermaid even with my eyes closed. What are the chances of becoming a different species? Bai Huanqing floated on her back on the ocean surface, unable to control her emotions, and began to cry loudly. Her cries, shaking the heavens, traveled far across the calm waves, even startling a still sleeping figure. The figure emerged from its cave, puzzled, and swam with uncanny precision towards the still sobbing sea otter. Bai Huanqing was truly devastated. She didn't reject her identity as a sea otter. After transmigrating, she had been diligently adapting to her new life, working hard to hunt and fill her belly. But that was under the assumption that this was an animal world. Now she was being told there were 4 billion merfolk. Wasn't this just deliberate torment? Her sorrow spread with her cries. The shadowy figure, still puzzled, moved a little closer. It flapped its tail for a while, then turned and dived into the water. After a moment, its arm was laden with many objects. These were all large clams and mussels, bigger than her paw, looking plump and definitely delicious. It released its arm, scattering the clams and mussels. Just as they were about to fall, a current mysteriously coiled around all of them, silently carrying them forward. Bai Huanqing's cheeks were wet with tears, and the fur on her face was soaked. Unable to control her body's instinct, she cried while reaching out her paws to smooth the fur on her face. Crying, she suddenly felt something touch her paw. A wave surged, and the sensation of being touched by a hard object became stronger. She stopped crying, puzzled, and turned her head to investigate. She saw a clamshell almost as big as her face hit her paw. Bai Huanqing stared blankly, then scooped up the clamshell. She shook it. It was solid, not an empty shell. But weren't clamshells at the bottom of the sea? How did this float up? Bai Huanqing dipped her head into the water to look, and as soon as her head went down, she was immediately covered in a pile of clams and mussels, almost completely surrounded. How could she let go of food that had landed in her arms? After crying for so long, Bai Huanqing was starving. She didn't care how strange the appearance of these things was. Her first reaction was to hug them tightly. Is this heaven's compensation for me? Bai Huanqing decided to retract her earlier curses. So what if they're merfolk? I have so much fur. Do merfolk have fur? What's so great about them? Bai Huanqing stared at the projection floating beside her, mechanically eating the food delivered to her mouth one by one. Her earlier sadness vanished. Since things were this way, no matter how sad or conflicted she was, there was nothing she could do but accept reality. Actually, the real reason was that Bai Huanqing remembered something else. If she were just an ordinary sea otter, she couldn't possibly have such high-tech products on her. Who would equip an ordinary animal with something that required manipulation? Bai Huanqing wasn't sure if every animal had it, or only special groups, such as those with zero intelligent communication. She couldn't imagine a sea otter clan developing intelligence and communicating normally. The grim mating rituals she had previously witnessed and the lingering fear of being relentlessly pursued by male sea otters were still deeply ingrained in her mind. If in the future she reached breeding age and had to follow her instincts to go into heat, Bai Huanqing would rather drown herself. She reread the merfolk description, then changed the projection back to nautical chart mode. This time her search target was, quote, mermaid cities. Soon, the nautical chart clearly marked the locations of large cities. These cities were widely dispersed. The closest one to her was directly to the south, and another was directly to the north. She was currently in the middle of these two cities. On the nautical chart, these two cities looked close, but in reality, they were very far. No matter which direction she went, it would take more than 10 days of swimming to reach them. Since she knew there were cities here, Bai Huanqing wanted to visit one and see firsthand how beautiful merfolk truly were. However, she didn't dare to act rashly. In a city full of merfolk, she would definitely be an anomaly, like a monkey breaking into the human world, knowing nothing and understanding nothing. If she were captured, she would be miserable. Bai Huanqing nervously rubbed her face and began searching for other terms. She realized that although she was now a sea otter, there was much she didn't know about sea otters, what they did, where they lived, their population, the status of their species, and so on. However, after reading the description, Bai Huanqing was stunned again. Sea otters here were considered an endangered species, extremely rare. Only a few areas had sea otter populations, and the total number didn't even exceed 10,000. Furthermore, male sea otters outnumbered females, and their reputation was extremely poor. The popular science introduction page described recording many negative records of males. Sea otter reproduction is much more difficult than other species. They only have one litter every 5 or 6 years, and only 1 pup per litter. Gestation takes 1 year, raising the pup takes another year, and it takes several more years for the pup to grow and enter its estrus period. More importantly, due to the sea otter's terrifying mating habits, many female sea otters are killed during copulation or die from excessive blood loss. Therefore, some female sea otters choose to give up their right to reproduce or prefer to choose other species as mates. Male sea otters who cannot find a mate have almost no sanity during their estrus period. At this time, whether they see pups or even pups and females of other species, they will frantically chase and pounce on them. Pups caught will absolutely not survive, but what is even more horrifying about male sea otters is that they don't even spare corpses. As long as the body is not destroyed, they will continue to mate with it. Therefore, male sea otters have an absolutely notorious reputation outside. In contrast, female sea otters are very popular. This is because merfolk particularly love furry animals, and sea otters have the densest, softest fur in the entire ocean world, earning them the title of most beloved animal. There are many dolls and robot toys in merfolk cities, and the largest number of them are all various sea otter shapes. Therefore, female sea otters have many suitors, and all of them are top tier. As long as they are willing, they can choose various merfolk roles as partners. After seeing this explanation, Bai Huanqing suddenly felt that the sun was so bright, the sky was so vast, and the world was so beautiful. She shouldn't have cursed the heavens. This wasn't a disadvantage at all. It was simply giving her an incredibly thick golden finger. Why would she even want to become a merfolk? Being a sea otter was simply divine. It was truly perfect. Bai Huanqing grinned excitedly for a while, her white teeth gleaming in the sunlight. The figure, who had been watching her from afar, saw her alternately crying and laughing, and hesitantly yet blankly flicked its tail. Is this sea otter crazy? After being excited for a while, Bai Huanqing calmed down. Even though sea otters were popular, she didn't dare to go to the merfolk city easily. She decided to gather more information first. Today, because of the sudden appearance of food, she didn't need to hunt extra, so she lay on the water, continuing to explore the internet. For several consecutive days, Bai Huanqing's life was calm and incredibly peaceful. Now, she didn't have to worry about her figure or need to lose weight. She ate to her heart's content, always keeping 2 sea urchins or a crab on her belly. Whenever she was hungry, she would open her mouth and stuff food in. In just a few days, she completely transformed into an internet-addicted sea otter. However, after calling for a long time, she still couldn't find a beginner's navigation interface. Instead, she unexpectedly discovered other things, a personal private space that only the screen owner could see. This space stored her personal information, date of birth, species, age, marital status, etc., like an ID card. It also contained her asset information and account balance. As soon as she heard account balance, Bai Huanqing immediately perked up, her 2 ears perked high. But soon she heard the next sentence, balance, 0. Not a single penny. All of Bai Huanqing's fur drooped. But thinking about it, it was normal. She was not yet an adult and had no source of income. Besides, the sea otter clan lived far from the city, so even if she had money, there was nowhere to spend it. But no matter what world she was in, having no money was a disheartening thing. The personal private space naturally couldn't escape advertisements. After the clear voice finished reading the asset information, it immediately asked her if she wanted to go to a certain address link. Bai Huanqing could understand the sounds of the words, but she didn't understand what it was for. So she concentrated and asked. This was equivalent to her defaulting to opening it. 2 seconds later, a dazzling interface instantly appeared in a 3-dimensional way, as if she were browsing a supermarket. Countless products were stacked in layers before her eyes, and the products looked incredibly real, as if she could reach out and touch them. When her gaze shifted to a certain item, the interface automatically zoomed in, displaying the item's details in all directions. Bai Huanqing instantly froze. This is a shopping website. When she saw that there was internet, she had been guessing whether she could shop online. And there really was, and it was so advanced. Her gaze lingered on various products, and somehow it turned to the stone materials section. The stone materials here were incredibly rich, and divided very, very meticulously. Different waters were divided into 2 types. Animals and plants. Under animals and plants, there were various flavors. Even if Bai Huanqing wasn't hungry, seeing so much food in front of her, she couldn't help but swallow. She scooped up a crab crawling on her belly, broke off a claw, and stuffed it into her mouth, chewing and watching. It turned out that merfolk didn't eat raw food as she had imagined. There were many processed cooked foods here, with frying, stir-frying, baking, and boiling, all readily available, no worse than human society's food. The food presentation was even exquisite, like works of art. Bai Huanqing looked at the delicious dishes above and instantly felt that the crab in her mouth wasn't delicious anymore. Perhaps it detected the crab near her mouth, as a row of crabs soon appeared on the interface. King crabs, bigger than her belly, majestically waved their fat and lean claws. Next to these foods were descriptions and prices. Bai Huanqing patiently listened to the introduction and finally heard the most important thing to her, the price. Such a king crab only cost 50 sea coins. If you bought 3, you'd get 1 free. Free shipping for orders over 200, and for orders over 500 sea coins within the area, delivery within 2 hours. For orders over 1,000 sea coins, same-day delivery throughout the entire sea area. Below, the delivery range was also listed. Whether it was a dark trench, 10,000 meters deep, or a land high in the sky at 8,000 meters, guests would absolutely not be kept waiting. Bai Huanqing's saliva instantly flowed from her eyes. If she had money, she wouldn't have to work hard hunting, or constantly look for places with abundant food. She could lie anywhere, and food would appear. But she had no money, not a single penny. She wasn't that unmotivated, only wanting to lie still. She had enough food now, and the feeling of hunting herself was quite nice. She was already skilled at it. However, she was severely lacking in a place to live. She concentrated her thoughts, and the shopping page quickly jumped. Because of merfolk's love for sea otters, shopping websites had countless items specifically customized for sea otters, including products for grooming fur, protecting paws, and even personal safety sprays. But what really made Bai Huanqing's heart pound was the sea otter house, also known as an artificial habitat. Sea otters are shallow water animals and normally cannot enter the deep sea. They eat and sleep on the surface of the sea. They can also sleep on land when resting, but most sea otters don't have the option of land. Therefore, merfolk specifically custom-made habitats for them. The houses came in a rich variety of styles, pink and cute, punk and cool, and all sorts of bizarre shapes. These houses could be fixed on the sea surface and would absolutely not drift away with the waves. Even in strong winds and waves, they could perfectly protect the sea otter sleeping inside. The rooms also had places to store food and tools for sea otters to open sea urchins. They even came with first aid kits. Bai Huanqing looked at the sales of coastal sea otter houses. Each had sold over 10,000, with some even exceeding 100,000. She scratched her fur, puzzled. If she remembered correctly, the total population of sea otters was only 10,000. So who contributed to these sales? Then she saw the shopping reviews. The reviews included videos, and most of the customers were merfolk themselves. It turned out that the target audience for sea otter houses was merfolk, not sea otters. The sizes were made quite large, and merfolk used them as beds, squeezing themselves inside, with their tail tips hanging out of the window because they couldn't fit. Bai Huanqing looked at the comments, at those merfolk who were clearly beautiful and should have been elegant and noble, yet contorted themselves into various pretzels, speechless, not knowing what to say. This was probably like humans who love cats so much that they buy a cat bed and then lie in it themselves. A bit childish and strange. But undeniably, upon seeing these sea otter houses, Bai Huanqing's heart pounded wildly. If she could own such a house, it would be perfect. With a mix of excitement and nervousness, Bai Huanqing looked at the price of the sea otter house. After seeing it, her heart seized up, and she almost fainted. The cheapest basic model cost 5,000 sea coins. The materials for these sea otter houses were precious, and the technology to fully fix them on the sea surface without drifting away was even more expensive. Plus, with various decorations inside the house, the average price was around 10,000 sea coins, and more expensive ones even exceeded 50,000 or 100,000. Bai Huanqing stared at her zero balance account and fell into a long silence. Who said sea otters didn't need money? She began to think about how she could earn money. A sea otter house wasn't a necessity, she could live without it. But people's desires are always many. If it's not wanting this, it's wanting that. If she didn't have internet access, it wouldn't be so bad. But now there were ready-made things right in front of her, and she could only stare longingly because she had no money, which was disheartening. After much thought, she still couldn't figure out what she could do. 1 skill, 2 resources, 3 connections, and still no clear idea. Unless she bravely went to the city and sold herself, perhaps many merfolk would be willing to pay a high price. Bai Huanqing reluctantly turned off the screen, avoiding the tempting array of products. She calmed down and groomed her fur. These past few days, she had been so engrossed in the internet that her eyes had never left the screen except when eating. If this continued for a long time, her eyes would be ruined. She might even become the first ever myopic sea otter. Her obsession with the internet subsided a little. For the next period, Bai Huanqing pondered how to make money and finally came up with a glimmer of an idea. Her biggest asset right now was herself. What kind of business was best? What was the fastest way to make money? Wasn't it live streaming and becoming an internet celebrity? Although she had no talents or skills, when humans watched giant pandas, did they expect giant pandas to cook, sing, or win awards? Bai Huanqing put herself in the shoes of a panda and decided to sell her cuteness to test the waters. She had been eating and sleeping well recently, and her fur was shiny, smooth, and incredibly soft, so much so that she couldn't stop touching it herself. Surely she could charm the merfolk. The merfolk's desire for sea otters could be seen from the existence of the sea otter houses. This was also why Bai Huanqing was so confident. After making up her mind, Bai Huanqing bravely opened the live streaming platform and began to browse the popularity rankings one by one. In the future, these would be her peers, and she wanted to earn more money from this to buy a house, so she had to first understand what others were streaming. After watching for a while, she felt that it wasn't too different from past live streaming, just that the content had changed slightly. Some showed off their wealth, some streamed their talents, some streamed their work environment, or some were more comedic. Besides merfolk, the other half of the homepage consisted of other species, such as dolphins helping others everywhere, octopuses painting with their 8 arms, pufferfish educating everyone about various marine creatures, dancing jellyfish, and so on. The homepage also features mukbangs, like an enormous shark devouring schools of fish, where large numbers of fish vanish with a single gulp. Virtually every livestream channel is bustling, none idle. Bai Huanqing pondered for a long time, a bit unsure if anyone would actually watch her livestream. Maybe I should try streaming a hunt, she thought, but her hunting wasn't particularly exciting. It mostly involved diving into shallow water and flipping over rocks. Bai Huanqing watched the live streams on the homepage for several days and gradually understood why these people were at the top of the rankings. Watching their streams was genuinely interesting. Whether it was a dolphin or a jellyfish, they always managed to be a little funny, and attractive with lovable qualities. Turning off the live stream, Bai Huanqing switched the screen to a mirror mode and observed her reflection. The white-furred sea otter looked adorably naive, craning her neck forward. Her small paws rubbed her cheeks, and the sea otter comfortably squinted her eyes, a slight upward curve at her mouth as if smiling. This pose was a bit silly. Instead of being cute, it was almost a little greasy. Bai Huanqing sighed helplessly. Attempting to be cute failed. It's so hard to make a living by being pretty. Another shadow, which had been secretly observing her, now silently lurked not far away. It watched the sea otter's behavior with confusion. The more it observed, the more it found this sea otter bizarre and captivating. Her emotions fluctuated wildly, changing by the moment, and her behavior was erratic. It was impossible to predict what she would do next. Yet, the more it watched, the more it couldn't tear its gaze away. It had initially just observed casually, but these past few days, it unconsciously wanted to come every day to see what she was doing and what situation she was in. That fleeting touch had left a soft sensation that still lingered in its palm. Every time it saw the sea otter rub her face and belly, it couldn't help but want to experience that sensation again. It was as if it were enchanted, completely unable to control its own actions. Perhaps the gaze was too intense, as Bai Huanqing, who had been observing herself in the screen, seemed to sense something. She abruptly stopped her actions and sharply turned her head to look. The waves were calm, and there was nothing but seaweed drifting. She swam in that direction for a while, even swimming out of the seaweed area, but found no abnormalities. Bai Huanqing returned to the seaweed area, turned off the screen, and didn't stay on the surface. She plunged into the water. Perhaps there really was an animal watching her, and she was too large and conspicuous on the surface. She quietly slowed her movements and swam towards where she suspected an animal had been. Bai Huanqing circled a few times and then dove deeper towards the seabed. She discovered a thin black flake floating on a seaweed-covered rock. She stared at this unfamiliar object in confusion, carefully touching it with her nose. She found that it wasn't a leaf at all, but rather resembled a meticulously polished jade stone. She opened her mouth, bit onto the jade stone, and floated back to the surface. Grasping the object in her paw, Bai Huanqing examined it against the sunlight. It was a thin flake, smaller than her palm. One side was flat, and the other sides had smooth, rounded curves. The curves seemed specially polished, making them very sharp. Did someone accidentally drop this here? Bai Huanqing tested the sharpness of the small black flake. It not only easily cut through seaweed, but could even leave a deep mark on a seashell, demonstrating its exceptional sharpness. Such a useful weapon, it's just a bit small, she thought. She found a piece of seaweed leaf, tied a knot, and tucked the small flake inside. A couple of days ago, she had seen small bags on the shopping website that could be carried on the back. They were small and compact when folded, but could hold a lot and came in particularly attractive styles. Bai Huanqing now wanted to buy everything she saw, and besides, bags were truly a necessity for females. Sometimes, when she found beautiful stones or shells at the bottom of the sea, she wanted to pick them up and keep them, but she couldn't carry them and had to give up. After several days of preparation, Bai Huanqing finally plucked up the courage to open an account on the live streaming platform. She had already caught 3 sea urchins and 2 seashells and placed them on her belly. Taking a deep breath, she began her first live stream in 2 lifetimes. It was noon, and the merfolk were lazily resting at home, casually opening their personal terminals to pass the time online. The morning, noon, and evening hours were considered peak internet usage times, and the active users on the live streaming platform were among the highest. The ocean wasn't only home to merfolk, there were many other intelligent species. Every day, countless individuals ventured into the live streaming business, but very few truly made it big. Those who occasionally became popular were often fleeting, like a flash in the pan. Bai Huanqing's inconspicuous little live stream room was quickly swallowed by the wave, making not a ripple. After the stream began, she barely looked at the interface. Instead, she focused on the sea urchins in her paws. Sea urchin shells were very hard. If one lacked experience, it would take a long time to crack them open. Bai Huanqing now ate 40 a day and had gained experience. The trick was that stone. It had to have a raised surface, preferably with sharp edges. With swift movements, she used the pointed stone to crack open the sea urchin, then brought the shell to her mouth with both paws. After finishing one, she casually tossed it into the sea and turned her attention to the next. After eating 3 sea urchins in one go, Bai Huanqing finally paused slightly. She had been too engrossed in eating and almost forgot she was still live streaming. She looked up at the camera and noticed that the previously empty room now had a few hundred viewers. Below, there were notifications for refreshing gifts. The gifts in the live stream room were diverse, including official product series and even hand-drawn ones from viewers. As long as they passed the review, they could appear in the gifting interface. Whether the gifts contained blessings or sea coins was up to the viewer. Bai Huanqing saw a viewer named Glittering Gold send her 10 sea coins. After splitting it 50-50 with the platform, her account balance finally went from 0 to a single digit. Although it was only a small amount, it was enough to make her excited. Bai Huanqing grinned at the camera, displaying a smiling expression, and then put her paws together to make a very unstandard heart shape as a thank you. After expressing her gratitude, she routinely began to groom her fur. To be honest, it was her first live stream, and she wasn't quite sure what to display, so she simply showed her daily routine, planning to adjust based on the reactions. However, Bai Huanqing focused on the gifts she received and didn't notice the frantic messages scrolling past in the live stream room or the rapidly increasing number of viewers. The live stream room, which had only a few hundred viewers moments ago, quickly surged to over 1,000 and was still rising rapidly. All of this was thanks to the viewer named Glittering Gold. Glittering Gold was a very rare golden merman whose real name was Jingwang. In the merfolk language, this name meant blessed by light. In merfolk history, there was a period when gold was revered. In the darkness of the deep sea, nothing was more enchanting than shimmering gold. Because of this worship, the Golden Merman clan slowly continued to exist and remains a renowned family to this day. Jingwang, as the youngest in the family, was very spoiled. He had loved furry animals since childhood, Almost every animal in the sea with fur had been petted by him at some point, but his favorite was the rarely seen sea otter. Having touched sea otter fur once, Jingwang was obsessed with the feeling of sinking his hand into it. Unfortunately, sea otters were even harder to find than golden merfolk, and he didn't dare to directly invade their territory and demand to touch one. He could only secretly sneak near sea otter territory in a submarine and peer through a periscope to observe their daily lives from afar. This behavior was too abnormal, and coupled with sea otter's excellent hearing, his peeping activities could only last half a day. Otherwise, he would be discovered and driven away. But how could half a day be satisfying? Jingwang, who had just finished a peeping session, curled up in his luxurious sea otter house, browsed the live streaming platform. He followed furry animals, such as sea dogs, sea lions, and sea foxes. Sea dragons were also very cute, but their large size wasn't particularly to his liking. Very few sea otters streamed live. The few that Jingwang followed were initially active but gradually stopped appearing. Because of this, he set sea otter as a keyword, and the platform would alert him whenever a sea otter appeared. He had just been casually browsed today, but then the notification sound, which hadn't moved in years, actually rang. Jingwang abruptly sat up, not caring that he had bumped his head on the ceiling. Almost instantly, he entered Bai Huanqing's livestream room. Based on his years of experience studying sea otters, he discovered that this was actually a young pup, a new sea otter pup. Excited, he immediately shared the live stream with several of his groups, which were full of like-minded people who loved sea otters. However, Bai Huanqing was completely unaware of this. She was still diligently grooming her fur. Only then did she notice sea urchin debris clinging to her mouth. She hesitated, gently patting the fur on her cheeks with her claw tip, as if she couldn't believe it. After a moment of stun, she raised her head and moved closer to the screen to look at her face. With such a close-up to the camera, the sea otter's furry face was completely pressed against it. Behind the camera, the viewers watching the live stream with three-dimensional projections instantly went wild. Their hands instinctively reached out, wanting to touch her cheeks. Unfortunately, their hands met empty air. They touched nothing. Jingwang, both excited and frustrated, slammed his fist on the bedboard and grabbed his sea otter doll, vigorously cuddling it for a while. But no matter how realistic a fake was, it was still fake. How could it compare to the real thing? He watched the little sea otter continue to groom her fur, hitting her with repeated gifts of map to get her attention. He started with small amounts, 10 sea coins, then 10 sea coins. Later, as the number of viewers increased, other viewers also started to tip, completely overshadowing him. So he increased the amount to 100, and in a short while, he had tipped thousands. Unfortunately, Bai Huanqing was still focused on grooming her fur and didn't notice any of this. This was probably the sea otter's obsessive-compulsive disorder. She had to clean herself after every meal, and once she started cleaning, she couldn't stop until all the fur from her cheeks to her belly was perfectly clean. Only after she finished cleaning did she remember she was still live streaming. She quickly moved closer to the screen to look. Upon seeing the number of online viewers, she instantly froze. 100,000? How did the number reach 100,000 just from grooming my fur? Then she looked at the tipping leaderboard. The top daily tipper had given her a whopping 10,000, and this was just one person. The scattered tips from others added up to over 5,000. After splitting it with the platform, she would get nearly 10,000. She had earned so much money in just one day. Bai Huanqing was both excited and hesitant. She instantly gained a new understanding of how popular sea otters were. Looking at the tempting balance in her account, Bai Huanqing decisively ended the live stream. Her first action was to withdraw several thousand coins into her account. Haha, I'm finally not a pauper anymore, she thought. She happily rolled a few times on the surface of the sea before opening the livestream interface again. Because Bai Huanqing was illiterate, during the livestream viewers left comments, but she had no idea what they were saying. It was impossible to have voice comments read aloud during the stream, so she could only see the special effects of the GIFs. Now that she had time, she meticulously clicked on each comment and listened to them one by one. A sea otter! A real sea otter! I'm so happy, so cute. So this is how sea otters eat. Don't their necks get tired or sore from constantly stretching? What is this place? Can I steal a sea otter? I have so much food at home, definitely enough to fill her up. Is that an iceberg behind her? Seems to be near the Arctic Circle. It's in Arctic City, not far. I have so much food I can give to the pup. Can she meet offline first? The comments were almost overwhelmingly full of praise and screams. But amidst the excitement, many people were also guessing her current location. During her live stream, she was facing an iceberg, and the camera could vaguely capture it. She hadn't expected that these people could quickly pinpoint her location through the iceberg. Even though the internet said merfolk were a peace-loving species, Bai Huanqing felt a slight unease. The internet wasn't just for merfolk. There were many other species, and it was hard to guarantee they wouldn't have other intentions. She was still a pup, weak, pitiful, and helpless. It was also possible she was overthinking, but it's better to be safe than sorry. Being cautious was never wrong. Meanwhile, the sudden end of the live stream online caused many to be shocked and incredulous. Yet, even so, people were only shocked and reluctant, not cursing. After all, it was a sea otter. Seeing even one was rare, so why ask for interaction? The viewers, whose enthusiasm had been ignited by the sea otter, remained excited, even after the live stream ended. They pulled up the live stream replay and watched it again from the beginning, then passionately recommended it to their friends, who then recommended it to even more people. Bai Huanqing wouldn't have predicted how many people would tune in for her next stream. At this moment, she was still cruising in the sea, searching for food. Because this seaweed area had numerous sea urchins, she could find food with her eyes closed every time she came down, so she hadn't thoroughly searched or carefully observed this area for a long time. Normally, Bai Huanqing would only casually pick up shellfish when they poked their heads out or appeared next to a sea urchin. Today, upon carefully turning over the stones, she discovered an astonishing reserve of food underneath. However, she wasn't hungry now. Bai Huanqing merely pushed aside the stones, checking her reserve food stash, and didn't open her mouth to catch anything. Looking at these foods, her previously anxious heart finally eased slightly. After circling the not-so-large seaweed area, she swam off into the distance. As she swam, Bai Huanqing suddenly felt that something was following her. She could hear a faint sound, a gentle current slowly flowing past. The thing must be quite large, like a dolphin or something. It wasn't far or near, but always present. Earlier, when she used the screen as a mirror, Bai Huanqing vaguely felt that an animal was watching her from a distance. But she had given up when she couldn't find it. Today, because of her address being exposed during the live stream, she had been a bit agitated. Normally, she would have just ignored it, but now that she realized it wasn't her imagination, she became concerned. What was it that was following her but not approaching? It didn't seem to have malicious intent. It probably wasn't a viewer of her live stream. This sound had been there for a long time, even before she discovered the screen. Could it be the owner of that terrifying sound she heard earlier? Bai Huanqing later pondered for a long time about what animal could make such a sound. After she got online, she also looked it up and found that merfolk all had loud voices that spread even wider than gold. Therefore, it was highly likely that a merman lived in this sea area. If she was being watched by a merman, Bai Huanqing wasn't so scared. Instead, she was a little curious. She pretended not to know anything and continued swimming forward. There was a huge protruding rock ahead. Bai Huanqing took a breath, suddenly sped up, and rushed past it. Just as she was about to round the rock, she suddenly let out a painful shriek. She tumbled and spun many times in the sea, her body hitting a rock. The animal that had been calmly and unhurriedly following her from a distance suddenly sped up considerably, seeming to come towards her. Bai Huanqing clung to the rock, her paws desperately gripping it to prevent herself from floating away, emitting mournful yin-yin sounds. She squinted, her eyeballs rolling around. It was really approaching! Bai Huanqing called out weakly, her voice getting softer and softer. From the corner of her eye, she quickly caught sight of a black shadow, seemingly a black tail. The tail was very long, with fine luminous scales shimmering on its black surface, and the tip of the tail was very slender and neat. It really was a merman. Bai Huanqing was a bit stunned for a moment, just as her gaze moved upward to clearly see who it was. As if it had seen through her disguise, the shadow that had been reaching out abruptly flipped backward, disappearing with extreme lightness and speed. Bai Huanqing only managed to catch a glimpse of a head of seaweed-like black hair and a tail. She didn't see anything else, not even its face. No way! Why is this merman so timid? What's so scary about a sea otter? Shouldn't I be more worried? With the other party now wary, it wouldn't be so easy to trick it into coming closer next time. It was a shame. as that fleeting glimpse of the figure left Bai Huanqing reminiscing for a long time. The black merman felt very mysterious, and its scales were especially beautiful, like a night sky sprinkled with stars. It was a pity she didn't see its face. If only she had looked up faster. She just didn't know what it wanted. Was it simply curious about her, or did it have another agenda? Bai Huanqing could only think for the best. Perhaps it was just a merman who was particularly infatuated with her. The merman, who had fled quickly, annoyingly flicked its tail several times. After flicking its tail, it finally lowered its head to look at its claws. So frustrating! I almost touched her! After finishing her fight with the fish, Bai Huanqing realized she had gone quite far. She floated back to the surface to check her bearings and then quickly rushed back. By the time she returned to the seaweed area, it was completely dark. Dark clouds had drifted from somewhere, quickly filling the sky. The wind howled, and the seawater constantly churned and rolled. A storm seemed to be approaching tonight. Bai Huanqing was caught off guard by this sudden storm. She tightly wrapped herself in seaweed to prevent herself from being swept away, but the waves surged several meters high with the wind and then crashed down violently. She was spun disoriented by the waves and could only wrap more seaweed around herself, almost turning herself into a zongzi, rice dumpling. The seawater stung her face. Bai Huanqing tried to hold onto the seaweed wrapped around her, but the slippery seaweed quickly slid off. Hooking it with her claws only tore the seaweed, and it slipped away from her hands again. Helpless, she could only drift with the current. Intense unease reminded her of the sea otter houses she had seen earlier. Bai Huanqing quickly opened the screen and swiftly ordered a sea otter house and a small bag. After buying them, her account had only a pitiful 3 sea coins left. Bai Huanqing turned off the screen and closed her eyes, waiting for the delivery. After the sound completely enveloped the sky, a heavy rain indeed arrived as expected. The waves grew higher, and Bai Huanqing felt like she was about to fly. At this moment, her greatest fear was that the seaweed wrapped around her would suddenly break. Bai Huanqing tightly pulled the seaweed wrapped around her with both hands. The sound of the rain grew closer, and everything was pitch black. Nothing was visible. The sound of the torrential rain and raging waves completely dominated, and it seemed fish were being swept up, flying into the sky, and then crashing back down heavily. Bai Huanqing's mood at this moment was even more nervous than when she was being chased by 4 male sea otters. A faint tearing sound, so insignificant amidst the sounds of wind and waves, yet it caused Bai Huanqing's heart to sink sharply. A piece of seaweed broke. She clenched her lips, her claws firmly gripping another piece, but she knew that piece wouldn't last much longer either. Whether human or animal, everyone is so small and powerless in the face of nature. Nothing can be resisted. The moment this thought passed through her mind, the next second she was swept high into the clouds by another surging wave. The other piece of seaweed hadn't broken. It had been completely pulled out from its roots. The moment she rushed towards the clouds, the torrential rain, which had been raging from a distance, also poured down, drenching her head. The raindrops struck her fiercely like dense pebbles. Bai Huanqing struggled to turn herself over, using her back to face the raindrops. At some unknown moment, the figure from earlier that day reappeared beside her. Its black fishtail almost completely blended with the night. No matter how violently the waves surged, it stood steadily at the top of the waves, its figure not moving an inch. The black shadow watched Bai Huanqing become a soaked otter, anxiously breaking through the waves and quickly approaching her. But just as it was about to reach Bai Huanqing, something suddenly floated up on the churning seawater. It was a square box. The box's outer shell was transparent, and it emitted a faint light. Through the light, she could see 2 items neatly stacked inside. The square box quickly split open, and the waves accurately found Bai Huanqing, who had just fallen with the wave crest. It landed on Bai Huanqing's belly, and a voice came from within. "Dear esteemed customer, your purchased sea otter house and portable bag have been delivered. Please confirm receipt. We wish you a pleasant life." After speaking, the box opened, and the items inside fell out. Bai Huanqing was already a little disoriented, but upon hearing this voice, her spirits instantly lifted. The delivery had arrived. The items on her belly slid down with her swaying. Just as she was about to reach for them, she saw that the moment they entered the water, the bottom panel adhered to the water's surface, and the sidewalls and roof automatically opened. A few seconds later, a small house appeared beside her. The pink small bag automatically dropped inside the house. The side facing Bai Huanqing had a door open, and a warm light illuminated the flat ground inside, as if beckoning her to enter. Bai Huanqing was so moved she almost shed tears. Seeing such a wonderful place to shelter from the wind and rain at such a time was simply a blessing from heaven. The black shadow took in this entire scene, retracted the paw it was about to extend, and seemed somewhat disappointed as it retreated backward, disappearing back into the sea. The rain intensified. Bai Huanqing used her last bit of strength to struggle, finally squeezing herself into this soul safe haven. The moment she rolled inside, the door of the house automatically closed, completely shutting out all wind and rain. Bai Huanqing lay on the clean, cool floor, panting. After a moment, she struggled to crane her neck, her paws weakly fumbling on her belly, her gaze surveying the small house. The room was actually very small, almost like a more refined doghouse. It was empty and just big enough for her to lie down. The only special thing was a small compartment near her feet, which contained a small shelf about a meter high. Currently, only a stone-like tool was on the shelf, and the other compartments were empty. The small house swayed with the waves, but the motion wasn't too great, like lying in a ship's cabin. Bai Huanqing rested on the ground for a while, then rolled over and pulled out the small bag that had been pressed beneath her. It resembled the shoulder bags women in her previous life loved, with a somewhat wide strap. She fiddled with it for a long time and found that both the strap and the bag could be attached to her body. When underwater, the bag would stay by her side, not getting in the way or falling off. The bag looked small, but it was all foldable. When fully expanded, it was almost half the size of the sea otter house. No wonder such a bag cost over $1,000. It was definitely worth it. By this time, the wind had also stopped, and the dark clouds and heavy rain had drifted away. This sea area slowly returned to calm, and the small house was almost still. Since transmigrating, she had always been floating on the sea. Never at any moment had she had the chance to experience lying on flat ground like this. Bai Huanqing felt as if she had returned to her previous life, slowly closed her eyes, and drifted into a beautiful dream. After she fell asleep, the black merman quietly approached. After lying by the window and watching for a while, it gently opened the door. It extended a claw and carefully touched the fur on her side. It wasn't as soft as the fur on her neck, but it wasn't bad. It retracted its claw tip and gently rubbed the fur with the back of its hand. After realizing that Bai Huanqing wasn't reacting or waking up, its courage grew slightly, and it placed half its arm across her side. Her thick fur almost buried its arm. The merman's tail wagged uncontrollably, like a dog's tail. Bai Huanqing didn't have much money, and the sea otter house she bought was the cheapest kind, without any protective or alarm settings. In her sleep, she felt a little itchy and rolled over, her entire face now facing the door, directly facing the merman. The merman thought it had been discovered, and quickly retreated underwater. After waiting for a while, it realized the sea otter hadn't woken up. It exposed its eyes, floated on the surface to observe for a while, and then swam over again. This time, it didn't reach out its hand again, but instead tucked a piece of seaweed into the door crack. This sleep was extremely comfortable. She habitually tried to sit up, only to realize she had just rolled around on the ground. Her body was more convenient in water than a human's, but on land she could only roll and crawl. She shuffled to the door and discovered the seaweed stuck in the door. She had been too tired yesterday to notice something had been added here. Just as she was about to throw the seaweed out, she saw something stuck in the seaweed. It was the small black flake she had seen on the seabed earlier. She had nowhere to put it on her body, so she had tucked it into the seaweed. Yesterday, the wind and waves were too strong for her to remember this. Bai Huanqing carefully took out the small flake. Once in her hand, she realized this piece was different from the previous one. It was much larger, clearly not the same piece. Upon closer inspection, its shape looked quite familiar, somewhat like a fish scale, especially like the scales on the merman she had seen yesterday. Both were black and glowed faintly. Could it really be such a coincidence? She thought. Then this scale appearing here might not be a coincidence after all, but intentionally placed. After she fell asleep last night, the black merman must have followed her again. This merman's behavior is a bit abnormal, she thought. But surprisingly, she didn't find it annoying at all. After the storm, much of the lush seaweed growing on the seabed was gone. Bai Huanqing dove into the water and felt a pang of heartache at the sight. She reached the seabed and saw that various snails and shells, which had previously hidden in the crevices of rocks, had all crawled out. It was also possible they had been swept up by the waves. There were even fewer sea urchins. Bai Huanqing even saw a few red-shelled crabs slowly crawling by, and 2 turtles, about 30 to 40 centimeters long, struggling to crawl forward. Sea turtles mostly live in the shallow, warm waters of tropical oceans. When winter approaches and the seawater temperature drops, they migrate to warmer places. If the temperature drops too quickly and they can't react in time, many sea turtles will be frozen solid. And this was a cold water area near the Arctic Circle. They were very likely swept over by the storm. At this time, the two turtles moved sluggishly, and she didn't know how long they had been crawling. In a little while, they might stop moving entirely. Seeing Bai Huanqing, the two turtles looked up and made faint, high-pitched calls. The slightly larger turtle on the left politely asked, "Hello, where is this? Is this your territory?" Perhaps it was too cold. Its voice trembled as it spoke, and its movements also stopped. It just floated there in the water. The smaller turtle next to it anxiously reached out an arm to touch it, making soft chirping sounds, but it was also freezing and could only make two sounds before it became silent. They leaned against each other like two stone statues. Surprisingly, they were both intelligent turtles. In her surprise, Bai Huanqing realized their situation wasn't good. She didn't know first aid, nor how to help them. After thinking for a moment, she simply went forward, grabbed one with each paw, and swam out of the water with the two turtles. She crawled back into the sea otter house, lay on the ground, and placed the two small sea turtles on her belly, trying to extend her arms to warm them. Bai Huanqing waited for a long time, and the larger turtle finally recovered. Its front claws moved, and after realizing it was lying on the sea otter's belly, it struggled to get down, but its foreclaws sank into the sea otter's fur. It shyly shrunk its head. "Did you save us?" "Thank you." Bai Huanqing shook her head, indicating it was fine. She wanted to ask them where their home was and how they got here, but she ying-yinged for a long time, and the two little ones didn't understand. She could only close her mouth and stop trying. The turtles, however, seemed to understand, and the larger one actively explained. "We live on the south bank of New Shell City. My brother and I came out to play and went too far. We encountered a storm and were swept all the way here. Our parents must be very worried about us now." As he spoke, he started to cry sadly, tears dripping onto Bai Huanqing's belly and sliding down her fur. One cried, and the other followed suit. The small house was instantly filled with crying sounds. This was the first time Bai Huanqing had seen turtles cry, and she was immediately at a loss. She reached out and patted their shells. It was true that parents would worry when their children went out, but Bai Huanqing couldn't just take the two of them back herself. It would be best for an adult to come pick them up. But the key was how to contact the adults. Bai Huanqing thought for a moment and opened the screen. In this world, there were many animals that couldn't make sounds. There was a special sound conversion tool online. Just like searching for things, they could convert thoughts into sound waves and emit them. Thus, she successfully communicated with the two small sea turtles. These two turtles, one named Xiaolong and the other Xiaojing, were brothers from the same nest, just born at different times. It was unclear why there was such a size difference. Bai Huanqing asked if they had a way to contact their parents. The two small sea turtles shook their heads and then nodded. Xiaolong said with a bit of embarrassment, "We know how to get back, but we don't have the energy." Turtles, like migratory birds, have migratory instincts and can sense magnetic fields. No matter how far, they can rely on magnetic fields to discern direction and return home. However, these two turtles were still too small, and swimming back in such a cold place was clearly unrealistic. They might freeze solid before they got very far. Bai Huanqing tapped their shells. "Do you know how to contact your parents?" The two turtles shook their small heads in unison. "We were supposed to get our identity chips today, but we got blown away." "All right, your parents must know the direction of the storm's path. They'll eventually catch up here. You two wait here for now. I'll go catch some food for you." "What do you want to eat?" "Thank you. We want small shrimp and small fish." Bai Huanqing's head was instantly covered in black lines. For sea otters, fish, although edible, were usually not chosen as food. A major reason was that they couldn't be caught easily. Shrimp could be caught, but there were simply no shrimp here. She glanced at the two turtles. "No picky eating," she said, then jumped into the sea. After several trips back and forth, Bai Huanqing caught many shellfish. She also caught a good number of abalones and sea urchins. The door of the small house was closed. The two turtles were afraid of the cold and also wanted to look outside, so Xiaolong stood up and leaned on the window, and Xiaojing stacked on his head to look out. When Bai Huanqing pushed the door open, she almost burst out laughing. She wondered how they managed such a difficult maneuver. Turtles don't eat as conveniently, so Bai Huanqing cracked open the seashells, exposed the meat inside, and pushed it in front of the two little ones. She herself sat aside and used the tool provided in the house to crack open sea urchins. Just like that, the three of them nestled in the small house, enjoying a delicious breakfast. After eating, the two turtles didn't stay idle. They had Bai Huanqing hold their hindquarters and put their heads into the water, making sounds underwater. This was a call for their parents. Meanwhile, the two turtles' parents were also on their way. Last night, they discovered their children were missing. At that time, due to the storm, New Shell City activated a protective shield to reduce damage within the city. No one could leave at such a time. After the protective shield closed, the storm had already passed for a while. The turtle parents were so anxious they were almost crying. After reporting to the authorities, they immediately took their own submarine and chased in the direction of the storm. In the Sea Otter house, with two young friends who could communicate, Bai Huanqing took the opportunity to learn about New Shell City. How's your city? Is it beautiful? Our city is very beautiful. There are so many fun things to do. There's a mountain lake and several trenches and a mountain that smokes. Bai Huanqing asked, "Don't you live in the city?" "We don't live in the city. It's a bit cold. Our houses are self-built and they're huge. When I grow up, I want to build my own house too." "What do you usually do?" "We learn to hunt, play with our younger brother, and help take care of our unborn siblings." Bai Huanqing was a bit curious if animals needed to go to school, especially since the technology in this world was so advanced. They should have about 10 years of compulsory education, just like humans, right? So she asked, "Don't you need to go to school?" Xiaolong nodded. "Our juvenile period is short. Adults start school, only merfolk go to school early. They are so pitiful." While chatting idly, Bai Huanqing didn't stay still. She habitually groomed herself, scratching her head with her paws like a comb, then moved to her face, gently rubbing the fur on her cheeks. Her eyes slightly narrowed, unconsciously immersed in this feeling. After swimming for a while, Bai Huanqing suddenly realized the two turtles were silent. She looked up and saw them staring at her without blinking, their small black eyes almost sparkling with light, and their tails still gently wagging. She looked at them with some confusion. "What are you two looking at?" Xiaolong, who had been lying beside her, moved closer upon hearing her, extended his head forward, and plunged his entire head into her fur. Xiaojing followed suit, burying his head as well. "So soft, softer than cotton grass." A faint sigh of wonder came. Bai Huanqing was a bit speechless. "Am I being absorbed?" Turtles absorbing sea otters was unheard of, unseen. She was a little amused and a little frustrated, but she didn't stop them from continuing. On the other side, the turtle parents, who had followed the storm, also arrived nearby. After smelling their children, they quickly surfaced. As soon as they surfaced, they saw the small house floating on the sea. The house's shape was familiar. How could there be a sea otter in a place like this? The two turtles cautiously approached. Upon reaching the front, the turtle parents looked at their two children stuck in the sea otter's fur, and their worried hearts finally settled. At this moment, the turtle parents' attention was entirely on the sea otter. The two exchanged glances and slowly approached the sea otter house. When Bai Huanqing saw these two, she guessed their identity. Just as she was about to raise a paw to greet them, she saw a head suddenly extend from the open door, bypassing the small turtles' heads, plunging straight into her fur. Then it took a long, satisfied sniff. Bai Huanqing was full of questions. "What's wrong with you turtles?" After discovering their parents, the two small turtles quickly poked their heads out of the fur, screamed excitedly twice, then twisted their bodies and jumped into the sea. The larger turtle father bent over, allowing the small turtles to jump onto his back. Xiaolong and Xiaojing were extremely excited, screaming and circling on the turtle's back. After the family of four reunited, the turtle mother, who had just come over and taken a big sniff, said with immense gratitude, "Thank you for saving them. We really don't know how to thank you enough." The further north they went, the colder the water became. The parents had prepared for the worst along the way. Their children might have already frozen. They never expected them to be rescued, and by such a precious sea otter at that. Bai Huanqing quickly waved her paw. "It was nothing. Don't mention it." The turtle mother rubbed her children's small heads with her own. "You must be thanked." Saying this, she swam into the water and came up again shortly after, biting a bag. The bag was bulging with items, The turtle mother laboriously dragged the bag into the house. Bai Huanqing reached out to help pull the items up and found that the bag was filled with food: fish, shrimp, crabs, sea anemones, sea jellyfish, and some unfamiliar seaweeds. When the bag was opened, the animals inside were still alive. In this world, except for merfolk, most animals were not accustomed to using sea coins as payment. They preferred to send food. For them, food was the most important and most precious thing. This is for you. If it's not enough, we'll catch some more. I remember you like to eat sea urchins, the turtle mother said, and then she was about to dive down again. Bai Huanqing quickly stopped her. No, I'm not short on food. Take these back with you. Give them to the little sea turtles to eat. After seeing their parents, Xiaolong and Xiaojing calmed down and became more lively than before. Xiaolong climbed from his father's back to Bai Huanqing's side, rubbing the fur on her waist with his body. Will you come back to New Shell City with us? The turtle mother also stared at Bai Huanqing with gleaming eyes. This was clearly not sea otter territory. For such a young sea otter pup to live alone here, perhaps she had some unspoken difficulties. If she could guide the sea otter, or rather, bring her to New Shell City, wouldn't she be able to absorb sea otters every day? One must know that among all the cities on the planet, very few had sea otters settling there. Not only did merfolk like sea otters, but they, the turtles, also liked them very much. Near New Shell City, there's a giant kelp forest, 10 times larger than this one. There are so many sea urchins there that they have to be cleared by machine every day. If you can come and settle there, we guarantee an endless supply of food every day. You can eat whatever you want, the turtle mother said, and even opened her screen to play a 3-dimensional projection of the giant kelp forest. It was a kind of brown algae, much taller and sturdier than the seaweed Bai Huanqing was currently seeing. Below the giant kelp, countless sea urchins were piled together. Not only were there many sea urchins, but also many brightly colored fish, clams, and crabs. If you are willing to settle down, there won't just be sea urchins. You can eat whatever you want. The entire New Shell City is willing to serve you. These words were a bit over the top, and Bai Huanqing's somewhat feverish mind instantly cleared. She once again realized the extent of sea otters' popularity. It was like humans seeing giant pandas. Is it really that exaggerated? Although she found herself cute when she looked in the mirror, it was just ordinary cute. Aren't seals cuter than sea otters? Bai Huanqing was tempted for 2 seconds, but still refused. Thank you, let me think about it. The turtle mother didn't insist when she was refused. She exchanged contact information with Bai Huanqing and left her home address. If you come to New Shell City, you can come find us to be your guides. We'd be delighted. Also, you probably haven't set up a safety alert. There are storm and tsunami monitors on the sea. Turn them on so you'll know in time when something is about to happen nearby. If you encounter danger, you can call the Sea Security Bureau for help. If you're injured, go to the rescue center. There's a quick setting in your private space. By making a specific sound, it will automatically send your location. It's normal for a pup like you not to be able to make sounds. Don't worry, it'll be fine when you grow up. If you're in a hurry, you can buy a special converter to tide you over. After realizing Bai Huanqing was an unaccompanied minor, the turtle mother became worried. Whether the little sea otter knew it or not, she still told her all these things, instructing her for a long time. Finally, the turtle mother had nothing more to say. Having found their children, it was time for them to leave. After the turtle family disappeared from the surface of the sea, Bai Huanqing sighed wistfully. Loneliness and solitude spread over her. She wondered if she could settle in a city somewhere, or return to her clan's territory. Not having anyone to communicate with for a long time was quite unpleasant. However, after thinking for a while, she let it go. Loneliness? Now that she had internet, she wasn't so lonely after all. Bai Huanqing began to lie on the ground and examine the gratitude gift the turtle mother had given her. The important thing wasn't the abundance of food, but the bag that contained it. This bag seemed to be able to temporarily preserve food. If she had extra food in the future, she would have a place to store it. Besides various edible foods, there were also 2 transparent jellyfish squeezed together in the bag. She didn't eat jellyfish and originally wanted to throw them away, but after thinking for a moment, she stopped. She pushed the bag into the water, holding the strap so the bag hung by the side of the house. Bai Huanqing didn't know if the black merman was still there. She sighed and called out towards the sea surface once, then put her head into the water, imitating the little turtles and calling out, "Merman, merman, are you still there? I have food here, do you want to eat it? I saved it especially for you." She had always wanted to give the merman a gift, and now, reciprocating the gesture shouldn't be too much. She hadn't even seen many of the crab varieties. The taste must be good. Bai Huanqing suppressed her drooling and offered the food to the merman first, considering it a return for the scale he had given her. After calling out, Bai Huanqing closed the door of the small house, with only one strap pressed under the door. She held the strap in her hand, her ear pressed to the window, listening carefully for sounds. If the merman came, she would know. Unfortunately, she waited and waited until her stomach started to growl, but she heard no movement. The bag didn't even sway once. The faint sound of water flow that she could hear the day before didn't appear either. Bai Huanqing felt a little disappointed. She opened the door and pulled up the bag hanging by the house. As soon as her paw lifted it, she noticed something was wrong. Food was missing. Indeed, it was less. The weight had significantly decreased. Bai Huanqing opened the bag with a look of surprise and found that the items she didn't like to eat, including the jellyfish, were gone. In contrast, there were a few more animals in the bag that looked very much like sea urchins. Perhaps they were different varieties of sea urchins. Bai Huanqing grinned broadly. "This merman is quite cute, but it's too mysterious and too timid," she thought. She poked her head out and called out to the sea surface again. A splash of water rose in the distance. She wondered if it was the merman's response. Bai Huanqing's dinner that day consisted of these unfamiliar sea urchins. Perhaps she had gotten tired of the previous sea urchins, as she found these varieties tasted better, had more meat, and were even more fragrant and delicious. At this moment, Moju, the black merman Bai Huanqing had been thinking about, was standing far away on the sea surface, watching the sea otter eat. In his hand were a few tropical fish. These fish weren't big and were probably prepared for pups, and their taste was quite ordinary. Normally, he wouldn't even glance at them, but now, watching the sea otter eating with such enjoyment, he picked up a fish and started eating it while watching the live broadcast of the scene. Bai Huanqing began to organize the bag after grooming her fur. The food inside had been eaten. She picked up the bag, intending to wash it with seawater and put it in a compartment in the small house. Just as she was about to push it into the water, she noticed something sparkling at the bottom of the bag. She put her head into the bag to look, and finally, in a corner, she found an ice blue round stone. It was very translucent and quite large, like some kind of gem. The gem wasn't a perfectly regular circle. How could there be a gem here, she wondered. Did the turtle accidentally put it in while hunting? Or did they intentionally put it in to thank me? But turtles shouldn't carry them. This was very likely placed by the merman. Bai Huanqing pinched the gem and held it up to the sunset. The stone reflected the brilliant light of the setting sun, clear and bright. Very beautiful. She carried the object and crawled into the house, carefully placing the gem in the small pocket of her portable bag, next to the blackfish scale. The merman had given her another gift, and she had only treated him to one meal, which made her feel quite embarrassed, as if she were being petty. But she really had nothing to give in return. Her active range in the sea was limited, and she couldn't find anything good. If the merman could be bolder and not always hide from her, Bai Huanqing could even expose her belly for him to touch. The merman liked sea otters so much. If she sacrificed her fur for him to absorb as a gift, he probably wouldn't refuse. Unfortunately, he was too timid. He hadn't even shown her his face yet. Moju, who had no idea what he was missing, was still observing from afar, his gaze repeatedly sweeping over the sea otter's head, belly, and little feet. In his paw, he tightly clutched the increasingly small tuft of fur. After experiencing a storm, Bai Huanqing clearly understood the importance of money. If it weren't for the timely delivery of the sea otter house, she wouldn't know where she'd be drifting now, or even if she'd still be alive. And if she hadn't started live streaming and earned some money, she wouldn't have had the capital to buy the sea otter house, so earning money was crucial. Besides, she now also wanted to buy a voice converter, otherwise communication would be too troublesome. 3 days had passed since her last live stream. In these few days, Bai Huanqing hadn't opened the live stream backend once. Now that it was getting late, she planned to stream again tomorrow. Bai Huanqing lay comfortably with her legs crossed. Lin Muxuan stopped directly in her line of sight. She planned to read some messages before sleeping. However, she didn't expect that the latest messages were all asking if she was safe and if she needed rescue. Bai Huanqing blinked, not quite understanding what was happening. She started scrolling back through the messages. After a while, she finally figured out what had happened. It turned out that her live stream that day had ended abruptly. Although it was her first stream, the number of viewers had exceeded 100,000, and more viewers came later after being recommended. The number of viewers after the stream ended was even higher than before. Viewers who hadn't caught the live stream watched the replay, and were all captivated by the little sea otter's big face, pressing close to the screen. At that time, Bai Huanqin had already seen quite a few viewers who had estimated her location based on the iceberg. She hadn't seen the aftermath, so she didn't know that less than an hour after the live stream ended, her coordinates had been completely exposed. However, talk was just talk. Only a few actually went to visit her offline. After all, such behavior was frowned upon, and the punishment was quite severe. No animal wanted to lose everything and go to the sewing machine, a euphemism for forced labor/punishment. Everyone originally thought Bai Huanqin would continue live streaming the next day, but she didn't. The third day still saw no stream. Viewers were getting anxious, especially Jing Wang, this passionate sea otter enthusiast, who was more tormented than anyone else. After getting Bai Huanqin's coordinates, he had been hesitating whether to risk going to see her. Just a quick glance from afar, confirm she's safe, and then leave. Absolutely no approaching, he told himself. This hesitation continued until the evening of the second day. Jin Guang suddenly realized something. That sudden and incredibly dangerous storm. Someone discovered that Bai Huanqin's location was directly in the storm's path. She was a pup, with no other clan members guarding her, and not under city protection. How could she safely get through such a big storm? By the third day, when Bai Huanqin still hadn't streamed, those who knew the news were asking and praying in the live stream room. Someone call the Coastal Bureau. This is a sea otter. What if something really happens to her? She probably didn't have time to call for help. Don't make such terrifying guesses. Absolutely impossible. She's in a seaweed area. Wrapped in seaweed, there shouldn't be a big problem. But the storm is so big. What if she gets swept away, along with the seaweed? What will she do then? Before finishing the comments, Jing Wang couldn't sit still anymore. Regardless of whether he'd be punished for being discovered, he immediately piloted his submarine and sped off. But the distance was too great. He wouldn't reach the coordinates until tomorrow. The news that a lone sea otter pup might have been swept into the storm was, somehow, spread from the live stream room to social media platforms. Due to the sea otter's special nature, this incident quickly went viral, and the phrase, might have been, turned into definitely has, becoming a sea otter pup in the Arctic Sea has been swept into the storm and its fate is unknown. The matter swelled rapidly like dough with too much yeast. The number of people following this incident immediately surpassed 100 million, and the popularity soared. The maritime rescue team was frantically bombarded with questions about whether they had received a sea otter's distress call. The rescue team in Arctic City was going crazy. If a sea otter really got into trouble in their area, it wouldn't just be a matter of responsibility. They would all be heartbroken. So the rescue team worked through the night, checking recent rescue records, but they found no distress signals from a sea otter. But even without a distress call, they couldn't sit still. 5 rescue submarines were deployed, commencing a carpet search in the storm area. By the time Bai Huanqin saw this incident in the live stream comments and then navigated to social media, seeing a large number of reports about herself, she was completely stunned. Wasn't I perfectly fine? How did it escalate into this? So now there was a large rescue team looking for her. Not just the rescue team, but over 100 million people were following her situation. Bai Huanqin, startled, poked her head out of the small house and looked around. It was already dusk. The sea surface was calm, showing no abnormalities, and there didn't seem to be any rescue teams around. However, just as she was thinking this, something suddenly rose from the sea. 4 massive submarines surrounded the small house. The lights on the submarines illuminated the entire sea surface. When the girl, giggling, imagined herself transmigrating into a merman world, she envisioned a beautiful fishtail swaying gracefully. But fate gave her a rude awakening. She transmigrated into a sea otter, soaked and matted by the waves. She initially thought it was a terrible beginning, but unexpectedly, the merfolk of this world were rabid fans of sea otters. By live streaming, rubbing her face, and acting cute, she became a top idol among merfolk. But Bai Huanqin never imagined that simply not streaming for 3 days would lead to collective concern from 4 billion merfolk, even spending tens of billions to have rescue teams search the entire sea for her. At this moment, Bai Huanqin watched in shock at the 4 huge submarines that had suddenly appeared before her. What's going on? I only streamed once and I didn't do anything else. Suddenly, a voice came from a distance. Hello, we are the Arctic City Rescue Team. We have no ill intentions. We just want to ask how you are and if you need any help. Bai Huanqin nodded and chirped twice towards them. Thanks for your concern. I'm fine. No injuries. You can come closer. So a dark mass of people quickly approached. Under the lights, Bai Huanqin saw a group of merfolk with ice blue fishtails. These merfolk's hair was a near black, inky blue, and their features were sharp and cold, with piercing eyes. They wore uniform tops, their fishtails exposed. Their gazes held a peculiar intensity, as if she owed them millions. Their hands at their sides were clenched into fists and trembling constantly, muscles subtly bulging in their arms, as if they might lose control and hit someone at any moment. Bai Huanqin couldn't help but shrink her neck. These merfolk are terrifying. Didn't they say merfolk were peace-loving? It doesn't look like it at all. The merman standing at the front noticed her movement and quickly coughed. Hello, I am Peng Duo, the captain of the Arctic City Rescue Team. These are my team members. We watched your live stream. It was very interesting. Were you injured during the storm the day before yesterday? We have doctors here and plenty of medicine. If you feel unwell anywhere, please tell us immediately. Arctic City's medical conditions are among the best in the entire sea area. You can rest assured, and all treatment is free. I'm fine, no injuries. Thank you for your concern, Bai Huanqin replied, but Peng Duo looked regretful. Oh, is that so? Realizing his emotions were inappropriate, he immediately adjusted. It's good that you're not injured. Do you have any other needs? We can help with anything. Do you need food? We brought a lot of food. Yes, we brought a lot of food. Someone immediately returned to the submarine. Soon, a supply box almost the size of the sea otter house was pushed over. The box's outer shell became transparent, revealing it was packed full of food. Bai Huanqin looked at it with admiration. The supplies were indeed abundant, and all of them were her favorite foods. However, she still politely refused. No need, I'm not short on food. Then do you lack anything for use? Another large box was pushed up at some unknown point. This time, it was filled with various utilities, diving equipment, protective suits, and even sea otter pillows and plushies. Before Bai Huanqin could speak, another merman with very long hair pushed past the captain and squeezed closer. He nervously took a breath and placed an item by Bai Huanqin's belly. I see you can't speak. This converter is the latest model, just bought. I hope you like it. After saying that, he took the opportunity to stroke her fur. After stroking, he covered his hand with a blissful expression, holding it to his chest. The other merfolk saw this and immediately pulled him back. All that was heard from behind was a wailing, and no one knew what happened. Bai Huanqin was just planning to save money to buy a converter, and now someone brought her a pillow when she was sleepy. But she was still a little uncomfortable with receiving gifts for no reason, so she pushed the converter away. I can buy whatever I need myself. You really don't need to give me things. The captain saw her firm refusal and, after a moment of thought, proposed a request. Then, can we exchange? Exchange what? Bai Huanqin was confused. What valuable things could she possibly have to exchange? The captain dramatically flipped his hair, extended both hands towards her, and said in an extremely loud voice, "Please, shake our hands." Bai Huanqin's head was instantly covered in black lines. So what the captain meant by exchange was a handshake? Before the rescue team appeared, she had only seen that one black merman she had been acquainted with from a distance, and even then, she only saw his tail and the back of his head, nothing else. This was her first time having close contact with a merman in reality, and she suddenly felt a little excited. Bai Huanqin took the merman captain's hand. His hand was more like a claw. The scales on the back of his hand felt a little rough and a little cold. His paw pads had no fur, so they could best feel the temperature. This was most likely put in by the merman. Bai Huanqin picked up the gem and looked at it against the setting sun. The stone reflected the brilliant light of the sunset, clear and bright, very beautiful. She held the object and crawled into the house, carefully placing the gem in the small pocket of her portable bag, next to the black fish scale. The merman had given her another gift, and she had only treated him to one meal, which made her feel quite embarrassed, as if she were being petty. But she really had nothing to give in return. Her active range in the sea was limited, and she couldn't find anything good. If the merman could be bolder and not always hide from her, Bai Huanqin could even expose her belly for him to touch. The merman liked sea otters so much, if she sacrificed her fur for him to absorb as a gift, he probably wouldn't refuse. Unfortunately, he was too timid. He hadn't even shown her his face yet. Moju, who had no idea what he was missing, was still observing from afar, his gaze repeatedly sweeping over the sea otter's head, belly, and little feet. In his paw, he tightly clutched the increasingly small tuft of fur. After experiencing a storm, Bai Huanqin grasped the merman captain's hand. His hand was more like a claw, the scales on the back of his hand felt a bit rough and cold, and his foot pads, being furless, were most sensitive to temperature. This group of merfolk had likely lived in cold waters for a long time, as their body temperatures were unusually low. She couldn't help but shiver. Peng Duo quickly withdrew his hand, asking with concern, "What's wrong? Are you cold? Quickly get the blankets and a dryer." "This sea otter house is too small and rudimentary. We also brought a deluxe model. Let's get you a bigger house. There's hardly any space here." As he spoke, he was about to push the items over again. Bai Huanqin quickly waved her hand. "What's with this habit of giving people things without a word?" "No, really, you don't have to." The captain shook his head. "This is an exchange. You let us absorb by shaking hands, and these are the rewards." Sea otter handshakes are very expensive. In fact, we're getting a bargain. Earlier, when Peng Duo held Bai Huanqin's paw, the merfolk team behind him were visibly envious. For their own benefit, they quickly chimed in. "Yes, the last time I attended a handshake event, it cost me 2,000 sea coins, and I could only shake for 3 seconds, not even a second more." Another one added, "I bought a hug ticket, a full 5,000 sea coins for only 2 seconds, but I bought 2 at once, so I got 4 seconds." Bai Huanqin felt her worldview being completely refreshed. Sea otters hold handshake events and sell hug tickets, priced by the second? She seemed to have suddenly found a new path to wealth. Captain Peng Duo nodded earnestly at Bai Huanqin. "So, you understand now, right? We're essentially buying this. If anything, you're the one losing out. You can pick whatever you want from these things, as long as you let us shake your hand. Of course a hug would be even better." With this explanation, Bai Huanqin had no objections. She didn't know if what they said was true or false, but judging from the attitude of the sea turtle family last time to the attitude of these merfolk and the online comments, it was highly likely to be true. Bravely emerged from the house, lay comfortably on the sea surface, and then extended her furry short paw towards the captain again. Peng Duo's eyes lit up instantly. He quickly reached out and tightly grasped her paw, his eyes curving in happiness, with what seemed like a glimmer of tears in their corners. Bai Huanqin was startled. Is it really that exaggerated? But Peng Duo didn't cling for long before he was pushed away by a team member. A group of merfolk took turns, shaking her paw. The bolder ones directly opened their arms and hugged her. Sea otters were much smaller than merfolk, so they could be held in a full embrace with ease. Other team members, seeing this, also boldly went for hugs. The captain, not to be outdone, also rejoined the fray. Just as the group of merfolk were scrambling for hugs, Bai Huanqin suddenly heard a rushing sound of water by her ear. The current was a bit strong and familiar, but also slightly different from usual. She was a bit unsure. She tried to lift her head and look around. By now, the sky was completely dark, with only the lights from the small house and the distant submarine. Bai Huanqin watched for a while, her gaze fixed on a certain spot. She wondered if it was an illusion, but she felt a gaze watching her from that place. Moju was inexplicably unhappy. This sea otter was clearly discovered by him first. He had generously allowed her to live here and even helped her drive away dangerous predators. She should belong to him, be his prey. But yesterday, the sea turtles gathered around her, and today it was a group of merfolk. So many merfolk, and she didn't even refuse or resist them? Moju's brow furrowed. He opened his palm and released the tuft of fur, which had been kneaded into an indistinct shape. The fur drifted away with the current and soon disappeared. He flicked his tail fiercely, turned and plunged into the sea. Bai Huanqin blinked. She knew that the owner of that gaze must be the Black Merman. He was so timid. With so many people around, he surely wouldn't dare to come closer. She wondered what he wanted to say to her. Compared to the merfolk in front of her, her curiosity and goodwill towards that Black Merman were much stronger. She withdrew her gaze, Just then, the merfolk seemed to have had enough. They stepped back and pushed the pile of supplies closer to her. You can use these freely. Are you planning to settle here permanently? Have you considered moving into the city? This sea area isn't really a good place to settle. It's in a storm belt, and dangerous situations like before will happen again. It'll be even more dangerous during the monsoon season. After hearing the captain's analysis, Bai Huanqin nodded thoughtfully. She hadn't actually planned to live here permanently. Deep down, she was still a human, and coming to a strange world, she always wanted to travel around and see things. Bai Huanqin picked out some useful items, such as the converter, a first aid kit, and protective suits. She pushed the rest back. She had seen the luxurious sea otter house. It was big and beautiful, but this current one was bought with her first earnings and held great significance. She didn't want to replace it. These are good enough. You can take the rest back. After confirming her safety, the rescue team was about to leave. A few merfolk pushed the supply box back onto the submarine. Peng Duo hesitated, then said, "Many people were following today's rescue operation. We filmed the whole thing. Can we post the parts about you online? Everyone was very concerned about you because of your previous live stream." Bai Huanqin put on the converter and nodded at him. "Yes, that's fine. We'll be patrolling this area often recently. If you encounter anything, contact us immediately. We'll be there as soon as possible." The merfolk reluctantly shook her hand, looking back 3 times as they returned to the submarine. Bai Huanqin watched the submarine leave. As she was about to crawl back into her house, she realized that the rescue team had quietly left behind a box full of food. She couldn't help but shake her head. One after another, they're all sending me food. Sooner or later, I'm going to forget how to hunt. She lay by the side of her house and opened the box. This box was more advanced than the one the sea turtle had sent. The box was very, very large and divided into compartments, with a different animal in each compartment. There was a control panel on the outside of the box. To eat a certain type, one would simply tap that compartment, and it would slowly move to the top layer, like playing a Rubik's Cube. Bai Huanqin played with it for a while, then remembered the live stream viewers who were still waiting for her news. She decided to open her live stream to let them know she was safe. Meanwhile, a few hundred meters away, the rescue team's submarine, which had just left, stopped. The merfolk who had just been smiling widely now wore cold expressions, surrounding a gleaming gold submarine. "What are you doing here, crossing sea territories? What's your purpose?" Jingwang was utterly depressed. He had traveled thousands of miles without sleep to get here, already seeing the sea otter's small house, only to be stopped by the rescue team at the last minute. He anxiously explained, "I saw online that the sea otter might be in danger. I just wanted to confirm she's safe. I also brought a lot of rescue supplies." Upon hearing it was for the sea otter, the merfolk, who had been trying to control their emotions, instantly had their eyes light up. The submarine swarmed forward. "She's after their sea otter in the Arctic Sea. This is outrageous. Capture her and take her away." When Bai Huanqin started her second live stream, she was still a bit nervous, but this time, her nervousness was mixed with gratitude. Besides the aggressive sea otter she encountered in the first 2 days, all the animals she met later were very kind. This greatly reduced her worry and fear of this unknown world. She took a deep breath and greeted the screen. However, just a few minutes before Bai Huanqin started her stream, the rescue team, who had just left, released the footage of the rescue operation, confirming that the sea otter was now safe. Netizens who had been following the matter closely instantly breathed a sigh of relief. The rescue team had close contact with Bai Huanqin and took many videos of her face. As if both heartbroken and deliberately showing off, the released rescue video featured close-up shots of the sea otter every few seconds. This video, due to its extremely skilled sea otter filming techniques, instantly sent a large number of sea otter enthusiasts into a frenzy and attracted passers-by who had not originally been interested in the matter. Before they could fully appreciate the sea otter, they heard that this sea otter was currently live streaming. Holding the thought of just taking a look, many passers-by also entered the live stream room. After Bai Huanqin said her first sentence, she saw the number of viewers in the live stream room rapidly climb from millions to tens of millions. Within minutes, the number of viewers began to change by tens of thousands. She initially thought there was a glitch in the live stream room, then remembered that such things probably didn't exist in this world. The viewer counts were real. Bai Huanqin exhaled and put her 2 small paw pads together, bowing towards the screen. "Thank you for your likes and concern. I was not affected by the storm and am very safe now. The rescue team just visited. This is my first time live streaming, so please bear with me. I will try my best to showcase my talents and present more interesting live streams. Bai Huanqin's purpose for coming online this time was just to report her safety. After saying this, she wanted to end the stream, but looking at the continuously increasing number of viewers, she felt a little reluctant. The main reason for staying live was the gifts. They hadn't stopped since the very beginning. The special effects of small fish and shrimp continuously bounced in the corner without pause. Reward amount could be set by oneself. Many people would tip 1 sea coin at a time. This was mainly because the streamer community was huge, and there were too many favorite streamers. Tipping a lot to each would be unbearable, so tipping 1 sea coin was very common. But with many viewers, the accumulated reward amount was quite considerable. Bai Huanqin smiled at the camera, her lips curving adorably and her eyes narrowing into slits. She decided to interact with the audience for a bit before ending. Bai Huanqin answered some questions from the audience, streamed for about half an hour, waved her paw at the screen, and ended the stream without any hesitation. After closing the live stream, she squatted in the back end, happily calculating tonight's earnings, 100,000. After this revenue share, her account had a full 100,000 extra. Bai Huanqin rolled vigorously on the ground twice, then slapped the ground. All of this was thanks to her identity as a sea otter. If she had really transmigrated as a merman, she would have long been submerged and disappeared in the vast ocean. Bai Huanqin was sincerely grateful for her identity. She loved sea otters. There was no cuter animal in this world than a sea otter, except for cats, of course. Unfortunately, this world seemed to have no such animal as cats. Due to her excessive excitement, Bai Huanqin kept the screen on and browsed online for a long time. Previously, when she had no money, she wanted to buy everything she saw. Now that she had money, she didn't know what to buy. The rescue team had already given her the urgent necessities. She wasn't short on food, and she had a house. After thinking for a while, she remembered that she needed to buy a gift for the merman. She had no experience with gift giving, and after searching for a long time, she still didn't know what to give. Bai Huanqin was momentarily confused. She turned off the screen, opened the door, and looked outside. The moonlight was bright, and the sea surface shimmered. She didn't hear the merman's voice. When the rescue team came, he briefly appeared once and then disappeared. At that time, it seemed he had something to say to her. Thinking of this, Bai Huanqin poked her head out of the small house and called out, "Are you still there?" There was no response. She didn't hear the special sound of water flowing. It seemed he had really left. Bai Huanqin felt a little disappointed. "If you want these fish, come and get them. I'll leave them for you. I'm going to sleep now. Good night." After she fell asleep, Moju, who should have gone far away, quietly poked his head out of the water again. He frowned, staring at the sea otter in the small house, then glanced at the fish in the box. Now she had many friends, and many people were sending her food. She no longer needed his help. He didn't know what emotion was stirring within him. He didn't touch the fish. Instead, he placed a bright red, star-shaped small seashell on top of the box. Then he gently opened the door of the sea otter house. Bai Huanqin was already fast asleep and didn't hear the movement outside. Mojiu touched the fur on her belly with the back of his hand, then quickly withdrew it. But he suddenly remembered that many merfolk had shaken hands and hugged her during the day. The hand he had just retracted reached out again, his 5 claws spread, covering the sea otter's furry back paw. His palm seemed to sink into the fur. It was very warm. After holding for a while, he was somewhat unsatisfied and extended his arm to embrace the sea otter. This feeling was so wonderful. Mojo completely didn't want to let go. Bai Huanqin seemed to sense something and rolled over, but still didn't wake up. Her arms just spread out, bringing her body closer to the merman's embrace, almost as if on purpose. Moju's tail vigorously twitched. He counted the time in his heart, holding her for a full 20 minutes, longer than any other merman had. Then, he finally withdrew his hand. Suddenly losing the embrace, Bai Huanqin rolled towards the door again. Muju was afraid she would fall out, so he had to reach out again and gently push her back inside. Afraid of startling her awake, he dared not use force. He tried several times with no progress. Finally, he had no choice but to gently pick up the sea otter and move her inside a little. Just then, Bai Huanqin changed her posture and made a soft, chirping sound. Muju instinctively recoiled and hid under the house. After waiting a while, he found that the person wasn't awake. It turned out the sea otter was talking in her sleep. Moju gently exhaled. His claw lightly brushed against the sea otter's body, and a tuft of fur fell into his palm. Then he clenched his fist and left. When Bai Huanqin woke up early in the morning, she instinctively let out a yelp. Last night, she had a nightmare. She dreamed that she was chasing that black merman, chasing for a very, very long time, until she finally caught him. She hugged the other party from behind, wrenching his shoulders, wanting to turn him around to see his face. But the merman wouldn't budge. No matter how she twisted, she couldn't see the front. Yet, she finally succeeded. Just as she joyfully looked up, she found the merman's front face was just like his back, covered in black hair. She was scared awake. Merfolk can't be that ugly, can they? Otherwise, why wouldn't he let me see his face? When it was time for breakfast, Bai Huanqin finally discovered the small, 5-pointed seashell. Shells of this shape and color were uncommon. Even with a diligent search, one might not find them. Bai Huanqin's first reaction was, the merman visited secretly again. Why is he like a shy little fairy who sends gifts to my house every day after I fed him twice? Bai Huanqin couldn't help but laugh, placing the seashell in her small portable bag and slowly eating her breakfast. After eating, she went online for a while. Thinking about today's live stream, it would be boring for viewers to just watch her sleep. No, I need to figure something out. So she browsed a shopping website and bought some fur products. Although there weren't many furry animals, there were quite a few types of products. Bai Huanqin chose one with a quantum smoothing effect. Just as she was about to pay, she heard the product description mention that the scent was 100% sea otter scent. She was puzzled. Sea otter scent? What kind of smell could a sea otter have? She lowered her head and sniffed herself, her brows instantly furrowed. It smelled like the ocean, fishy and salty, with a faint hint of saliva, not very pleasant. Even she was a little disgusted with herself. But there weren't many fruits or flowers in the sea, unlike on land. Besides merfolk, hardly any animals cared about how something smelled. Therefore, all the fur products had very strange scents. Bai Huanqin looked around and even saw dead fish scent and bloody scent. Who would dare to use a bloody scent product in the sea? They must be worried they're living too long. After much deliberation, she finally found a more normal one. Cold-blooded scent. According to the product description, it felt cool when used and smelled very fresh. Besides fur cleaner, softener, and brightener, she also bought a bottle specifically for the black merman's tail scales, a conditioning agent and hair conditioner. Hair that was soaked in water every day, if not properly cared for, would become like withered grass. Whether human or merman, as long as they had hair, they would suffer from dryness, split ends, and hair loss. And merfolk were even more meticulous than humans, so there were more such products for them. Having reached the delivery amount, Bai Huanqin paid and then lay on the sea surface, calmly waiting for the delivery. Perhaps it was delivered from nearby. It arrived in less than 2 hours. In fact, this time the delivery person wasn't an intelligent machine, but a giant fish over 3 meters long. This fish was very peculiar. Its body was flat and its surface smooth and scaleless. The most striking feature was its mouth, like 2 giant pointed spines. Its tail was forked and powerful, like a shark's. At first glance, seeing such a terrifying large fish suddenly surface and rush towards her, Bai Huan's first reaction was to quickly retreat and avoid it. Recently, she had only encountered kind fish, and she had almost forgotten the dangers of the ocean. But she was fast, and the fish was even faster, breaking through the sea surface like a yacht at full throttle, rushing towards her. Bai Huanqin didn't hesitate to dive into the water and swim north. At the same time, her paw was already on her personal terminal at her side, ready to call for external assistance. However, before she could swim far, she heard a muffled sound from behind her. Bai Huanqin turned around, and a familiar back and a head of extremely smooth, black, shiny long hair appeared in her vision. The long hair swayed in the sunlight, faintly shimmering with rainbows at the tips. It was the black merman. The panic that had just surged in her heart was instantly replaced by pleasant surprise. Bai Huanqin's eyes widened, wanting to call out, but afraid of affecting the merman, she could only frantically wave her paws, silently cheering him on. Moju didn't know why he had come again. He had originally just planned to take a quick look and then leave. Unexpectedly, as soon as he arrived, he happened to see the little sea otter being chased by a swordfish. He rushed forward with almost no hesitation. After delivering a punch, he saw a package hanging from the swordfish's tail. It seemed he had hit the wrong fish. Moju quietly put his arm behind his back, flicked his tail, plunged into the water, and disappeared. The fish, which was almost belly up, finally managed to speak. "Why did you hit me? Woohoo! Don't run! I'll catch you after I finish this delivery." Sixy felt incredibly miserable. He was the delivery person for the Arctic City Sea area, a swordfish famous for his speed. This order was one he had managed to snatch after defeating 10 colleagues. He had thought he could touch the sea otter, or let the sea otter touch him. Who would have thought the sea otter would run away as soon as she saw him? Not only did he almost fail the delivery, but he was also hit on the half of his body. He hadn't even clearly seen the assailant's appearance. He pondered for a long time, then, seeing the sea otter stopped not far away, he quickly endured the pain and quietly called out, "Hello, I'm the delivery person. Sixy, you have a package for signature." Saying this, his tail slightly hooked forward, and a package floated towards Bai Huanqin. Bai Huanqin caught the package and immediately saw the items she had just ordered. "Ah, I misunderstood you. I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" "My friend didn't mean it. He thought I was in danger. I'll compensate you. You should go get checked." Saying this, she transferred several thousand sea coins. Sixy had indeed not been well when he was first hit. He thought he was dying, his whole body paralyzed. But after a while, when the pain subsided, he found that he was actually fine. He returned the money and stared at Bai Huanqin with his big black eyes. "I'm fine, but I have a request." Bai Huanqin nodded nervously. Sixy took a breath as if he was deliberating something. The next second he spoke. "Can you touch me?" Bai Huanqin instantly froze. She thought she had misheard and confirmed again, "You want me to touch you?" Moju, who hadn't gone far yet, quickly turned his head. Over there, Bai Huanqin's hand was already on the swordfish's back. Swordfish were different from other fish. Their fins were very short, and they couldn't communicate with people using their mouths like dolphins. Their tribe's mouths were weapons. To make contact, they could only rub their bodies. The swordfish's body was very smooth and round, with few scales, and felt cool to the touch. But as Bai Huanqin touched it, her mouth couldn't help but water. It looked quite delicious. Afraid that Sixy would discover her thoughts, Bai Huanqin quickly suppressed that idea. "Is this okay?" Sixy nodded. "Yes." After the swordfish left, Bai Huanqin let out a long sigh of relief. That was truly a close call. Thankfully, the black merman appeared and saved her. Then, she opened the package, took out the item she wanted to give to the merman, and called out to the surroundings, "Thank you for saving me just now. I bought you a gift. Can you come out for a bit?" Moju was actually standing not far behind her. He looked at the sea otter's furry back of the head, and the coldness on his face slightly receded. Bai Huanqin waited for a while, but received no response. Knowing the merman's personality, she stopped calling out, and instead placed the items by the door for him to pick up himself. Soon after she placed them, she suddenly heard a sound of flowing water. Before she could locate the source of the sound, she caught a glimpse of a flash of light from the corner of her eye. Turning to look at the door, the 2 bottles of conditioning agent were gone. Not far in front of her, a fishtail had just entered the water. Bai Huanqin suddenly reached out and grabbed the fishtail. The merman, whose upper body was already in the water, twisted his body softly, surfacing his head. Bai Huanqin's gaze met a pair of eyes like precious gems quietly resting on the deep. The mermaid, with her upper body already submerged in the water, contorted her body with exceptional softness, bringing her head to the surface. Bai Huanqin's gaze met a pair of eyes. What eyes those were! Like gems resting silently in the depths of a calm sea. Beautiful to the point of captivating, inspiring fear, but at the same time, impossible to look away from. Stunned, she let go of her claws, and Yuan Yu took the opportunity to dive in and disappear. Bai Huanqin took a long time to come back to her senses, and suddenly slapped her belly. Wow! It turns out that she was a mermaid of incomparable beauty. She had imagined her appearance countless times in her mind, but she felt that none of them were accurate. If her eyes were so seductive, how beautiful would her face be? Bai Huanqin shook off all the yellow material that filled her mind, and her gaze was filled with determination. No! Next time I have to see her face. After, Bai Huanqin ate something and went to sleep. Unexpectedly, she had barely entered the hut when the screen opened automatically. It was an earthquake alert. An earthquake of about 4 to 8 degrees on the Richter scale. is expected in the Southeast Sea in the next 2 days. Once it happens, there will be a tsunami. Nearby residents should evacuate quickly to safe areas. Submarines should also avoid this area recently. Bai Huanqin tensed for a moment, but then realized that the earthquake zone was far, far away from her, and that she was outside the danger zone. This warning was probably addressed to everyone, so she calmed down. However, when she went back to sleep, she didn't notice that the screen opened again on its own. This time, it was still a double earthquake and tsunami alert, only its location now appeared on the edge of the danger zone. The sound of the alert, mixed with the wind and waves outside, became a lullaby. Bai Huanqin slept even more soundly. When she woke up the next day, Bai Huanqin got into the water and swam for a while. She found that the fish that used to move among the algae had disappeared, and even the sea urchins had completely disappeared. Bai Huanqin began to feel that something was wrong, but she couldn't pinpoint what. Suddenly, a dull rumble came from who knows where, as if the entire ocean was shaking. Bai Huanqin immediately turned around, jumped out of the sea, and got into the small hut, closing the door easily. Just a second after entering the cabin, the dull rumble intensified sharply. The gray and white sky was gradually invaded by a vibrant blue color. It wasn't that the clouds had dispersed, but that a wave more than 100 jang high was rushing down from the horizon. Bai Huanqin, with her eyes wide open, clung to the window. The flashing danger alert on the screen went off. The danger zone is approaching. Immediately go to a safe zone for shelter. Bai Huanqin held on tightly to the door of the hut. Didn't they say it was too far from here? Thinking about this, she rushed to open the past warning alerts on the screen and found that there were several more overnight, each more urgent than the last. But at that moment, she was sleeping soundly and hadn't seen or heard anything. As the waves drew closer and closer, she prayed in her heart that the cabin could hold up. She crawled slowly toward the wall, tied a small bag around her waist, and took off her protective suit with her mouth, beginning to put it on with difficulty. However, as she struggled to get dressed, the huge wave had already hit. The hut, which had been quiet, began to shake violently. Bai Huanqin lost her balance and fell backwards against the window. The hut was completely in the center of the tide, and it swayed harder and harder. Bai Huanqin couldn't stand up, she could only lie on the ground, crawling forward like a seal. After much effort, she finally got completely into the protective suit. This suit was full protection, covering her completely from head to toe, and did not affect vision or swimming. Outside, the sky had completely darkened. The grayish clouds had turned black. In the depths of the ocean, from time to time, a rumble and vibration could be heard. Just then, a large wave fell. The window pane shattered violently, and the seawater rushed in quickly. The door also opened outwards, pushed by the water coming in. Bai Huanqin's head was buzzing. With her claws, she clung to the door so as not to be dragged away. But the cabin, bought at the cheapest price, was not of such impressive quality. In this situation, in fact, it lost the strength to firmly adhere to the surface of the sea. The hut, along with Bai Huanqin, was thrown by the waves into the sky. The hut could no longer be fixed, and there was no point in Bai Huanqin holding on. She released her claws, and the next second, her entire body shot out of the hut, being swept away by the great wave. This tsunami was several times stronger than the previous one. The seawater rose to more than 100 meters, almost being able to touch the clouds just by stretching out your hand. Bai Huanqin felt some fear and struggled to shrink into a ball. She found that the protective suit inflated slightly, like an inflated balloon wrapping around her. The force that should have hit her was compensated. Bai Huanqin's fear was instantly halved. No! If I can escape with my life, I must choose a city to settle in. This is too dangerous. But that black siren, now that the situation is so dangerous, has she protected herself well? Will he have left before? I haven't seen the mermaid's face yet. I really want to see her before I go. The vibration under the sea had ceased. She didn't know when the tsunami would end, nor did she know where the waves were dragging her. Although she was still wearing the protective suit, she felt colder and colder. Bai Huanqin, following the waves, crashed headfirst into the water. She thought that this time she would be fine too, but suddenly an intense pain came from the crown of her head. She suddenly realized why she felt cold. The protective suit had torn. After half an hour of resistance, the protective suit had been torn by a stone. Without the cushioning of the protective suit, a twinge of intense pain took hold of Bai Huanqin. She screamed in pain, and the next second, she fell into a coma. The small hut, without consciousness, was thrown over and over again by the waves, like a duckweed that does not know where it will be dragged. The torrential rain was falling, and the entire ocean was boiling and roaring, as if the sea god was furious. The black mermaid soared against the waves, her long hair floating behind like seaweed. Its speed was incredibly fast, its tail hitting the waves and towering over the crest of the wave. In just a moment, he arrived at the place most ravaged by fury. The cabin appeared and disappeared among the waves, and its condition was a little bad. Various plants, animals, and rocks collided on the crest of the wave. The hut already had wounds on its body, and its fur was messy without the feeling of softness, like dry grass waiting to be cut, lifeless. The mermaid also couldn't determine the location of the cabin. He couldn't help but stop. The next second, a long, peculiar cry came out of his mouth. The sound echoed off the surface of the sea. He listened intently for a moment, and then dived back into the sea. The mermaid moved quickly through the waves and accurately found the cabin unconscious. With one arm outstretched, a figure appeared in his arms. The hut hung loosely in the hollow of his arm, with her face, which used to be always full of spirit, now calm. The mermaid opened the protective suit and carefully stroked her cheek. It was a little rougher than I imagined, but very pleasant to the touch. The mermaid raised her head and looked around for a moment. The little cabin was gone. Now there was only a small bag left next to her. The situation of the cabin was not good. She had wounds on the back of her head and arms. Now the wounds had turned white from the water. The most problematic thing was the low temperature. The hut had no fur to keep warm, and its whole body was frozen. Its fleshy pads were as if frozen, cold to the point of frightening. The mermaid hugged the hut tighter and dived to the bottom of the sea. The bottom of the sea was murky. You couldn't see anything, but the mermaid didn't need a guide. He went straight to a place. Here the temperature was even lower, and the seawater began to become transparent. Gradually, some huge white icebergs could be seen. The mermaid moved between the cracks of the icebergs for a long time, and finally spun under a gray and white mountain. With his tail, he pushed aside the rocks that camouflaged the cave entrance into the wall, revealing a cave of blue light behind. The cave was very deep. When they reached the end of the cave, after passing through a waterfall gate, the seawater level dropped sharply. It was a very spacious cave, half water and half air, like a huge swimming pool. There were also wide stone platforms around. There seemed to be live creatures in the pool, as some silver fish were seen bubbling up. Moju, he gently placed the small hut on the stone platform. He put the palm of his hand on the chest of the hut, feeling if her heart was still beating. Moju gently rubbed his claws, feeling how the fleshy, almost frozen pads gradually regained their temperature. The wounds in the hut needed to be treated as soon as possible. Moju turned around. The cave was very empty. Apart from 2 bottles of care lotion on one of the platforms, there was hardly anything. There was no sign that anyone had lived there. Suddenly, he remembered the swordsman and swam out. Moju left for a bit of a long time this time. When he returned, he was carrying a small box of bees in his arms. The hut hadn't woken up yet, but the cold temperature of its body had recovered. Not only had she recovered, but she was exceptionally tall. Moju opened the box with his fingertip and frowned as he looked at what was inside. It was the first aid kit that the rescue team had given to Bai Huanqin. When the hut broke, all these things were scattered. He didn't know how he had found them. He took out the entire contents of the medicine cabinet and sniffed them one by one. He opened a bottle of medicine and poured it on the wounds in the hut. After healing the wounds, he sighed and dropped his tail into the water. His upper body was resting on the edge of the stone platform, facing the hut. Suddenly, he remembered that the cabin needed to have its fur fixed every day. He extended the tip of his finger and began to comb it, stroking it again and again. I didn't know how long he was cleaning. Moju lay down next to the hut and slowly fell asleep. Bai Huanqin didn't expect to have a chance to wake up. Her whole body ached, but in the painful places she felt a fresh sensation. She opened her eyes in a daze and saw a large expanse of irregular whitish gray. For a moment, she thought she was still on the surface of the sea, but the rest of the sensations were not like water, but like a stone, very hard. She tilted her head in confusion and suddenly discovered that a mermaid lay next to her. After seeing the mermaid's face clearly, her eyes widened. God, an immortal! Bai Huanqin never dreamed that. Traveling to the world of mermaids, with its 4 billion inhabitants, it would become a small furry cabin. Fortunately, the mermaids of this world were fans of cabins. Rubbing her face and acting cute, she managed to earn her first capital. However, before 2 days of quiet life had passed, she encountered an unprecedented tsunami. Fortunately, a mysterious black mermaid appeared and saved her. Seeing the beautiful face of the black mermaid, Bai Huanqin felt that for the first time in her hut life, she had a hope. Who knew that the black mermaid had saved her with the intention of fattening her up as a food reserve? At that time, Bai Huanqin looked at the mermaid in front of her with her face full of astonishment. How beautiful. Really too beautiful. Instead of a mermaid, he looked more like an evil mermaid. Incredibly handsome. Those perfect features didn't have the slightest flaw. Bai Huanqin had seen mermaids online for so long, but she had never seen a mermaid with the same characteristics as this. In short, it didn't look like a normal fish. But the first moment she saw this mermaid, a small arrow hit her hard in the heart. Her heart was pounding so hard that it felt like it was going to pop out of her chest. She stared at that face. Unable to look away, Bai Huanqin raised her claw and put it on her chest. Oh, it's the feeling of falling in love. I have fallen in love with this fish. Bai Huanqin stared at the mermaid's face, and her claw quietly stretched forward, wanting to touch him. However, before she could touch it, the siren woke up. Moju felt something approaching him, and rudely woke up from his sleep. At the same time as he opened his eyes, his hand had already grasped the claw. After grasping it in the palm of his hand, he noticed that what he was holding was soft and hairy. Subconsciously, he clenched his claw and squeezed it. Not only was it soft, but it also had quite a bit of stretch. Bai Huanqin's face turned red instantly. However, her face was covered by a layer of fur, so even if she turned as red as a monkey's butt, no one would see her. So she looked at the mermaid with utter brazenness and even held out her claw in his hand, gently scratching his palm with the tip of her claw. Indeed, reality and dreams are opposites. I dreamed that the mermaid's face was like a horror movie, but it was actually like a fantasy movie. Moju felt the touch in his palm and frowned. He looked up and saw Bai Huanqin, who was already awake. He quickly let go of his hand and pulled away a little, wanting to hide in the water by reflex. But Bai Huanqin had finally seen his face. How could she let him escape again? She stretched out her short arm, and her furry paw caught his hair. So with this move, her wounds hurt a little. She complained, and her upper body fell back onto the stone. Moju frowned sharply and turned. He found that the claw of the hut was hugging him tightly, without letting go of a single strand of hair, and was looking at him with blinking, pitiful eyes. "Did you save me?" "Thank you," Bai Huanqin said, bringing the hair in her arms to her nose to smell it. "It smells sweet and clean. It's the same type of hair conditioner I use." "It smells great." Seeing this scene, Moju slapped the water with his tail, as if he had received a huge fright. The fins of his ears, which were attached to his head, stood up instantly. Bai Huanqin watched the change in his ears, first surprised and then smiling like a flower. "What beautiful ears!" She let go of the hair from her mouth, but her claw was still holding the hair. "How did you save me? I was in such danger at the time. Did you get hurt?" Moju just nodded, not saying a word. I didn't know if he couldn't speak or didn't want to talk. Bai Huanqin didn't care. She just stood there, lying down, looking up at his chest and chin. The mermaid's chest was really broad and thick, and she could glimpse his pectoral muscles. The flesh felt very elastic and soft to the touch. I didn't know if it was like human muscle or fish meat. With such a cheeky look, from top to bottom, Moju frowned slightly. Suddenly, his body approached the cabin. That exquisitely beautiful face slowly approached and soon landed on the hut. Bai Huanqin opened her eyes wide, her claws a little stiff. "What are you going to do so closely?" the hut said. However, Moju abruptly pulled back his hair. After retrieving it, it quickly softened and moved straight to the other side of the cave, sliding across the surface of the water. The top of his dark head could barely be seen. Bai Huanqin was stunned for a long time, then covered her stomach and laughed. Sure enough, he's still that shy, skittish merman, but after laughing a little, it hurt so much that she grimaced, especially from the blow to the head. Although medicine had relieved her greatly, the wound would not disappear so quickly, and if she raised her head a little, she would get dizzy. Bai Huanqin slowly lay down on the ground, with her head up, not daring to move. The siren did not come out. Bai Huanqin, bored, sought conversation. "My name is Bai Huanqin. What's your name? Why do you follow me? You like me, but why are you hiding from me?" Bai Huanqin was not a talker, but she had lived alone for so long. Although I could chat with the screen when I was broadcasting live, in the end it was different. She had to take care of her image, and she didn't dare to say too much. Moreover, she had been curious about this mermaid for a long time, and now that she could finally see it, she wanted to get closer to it. Unfortunately, the mermaid was taciturn and refused to answer her. Bai Huanqin was chattering for a long time. The mermaid remained hidden underwater, without coming out. As she spoke, she felt a surge of fatigue, her eyelids feeling heavy. She turned her head slightly to where the mermaid was hiding and smiled. "You're very shy. I'm not afraid of you. What are you afraid of? Now I'm a little sleepy. I'm gonna sleep a little." With that, she closed her eyes. Moju heard the regular breathing coming from the hut and slowly pulled his head out of the water to look. When he discovered that she was really asleep, he calmly climbed out of the water. "I've never really seen such a talkative cabin." He swam gently towards the cabin, feeling inexplicably that the sleeping cabin was even cuter. Moju touched the head of the hut and felt it a little hot. Bai Huanqin had been at sea for a long time. After her fur got wet, she stayed near the iceberg for quite a while. Wounds plus the cold. Even though the wounds had been treated, she still had some fever. Moju, for the first time, faced this situation and was a little lost. He turned to look out of the cave. His gaze seemed to pierce layers of seawater, seeing something. In fact, after the earthquake moved north, the rescue team sensed that something was wrong and began to worry. Bai Huanqin's location was right in the danger zone. If she couldn't leave in time, she could be affected. At this time, the tsunami had not yet subsided, and several submarines quickly approached. However, no matter how hard they searched, they could only find the broken hut and street lying everywhere. The cabin was neither alive nor dead. Moju knew that the rescue team was outside. If he called for help, they could save the cabin. But looking at the small hut that lay silently in front of him, he didn't move. Instead, he went down to the stone platform hut and swam deeper into the cave. The mountain was very large, with caves connected to caves. The deeper, the higher the temperature inside the caves. Moju took the small hut for a while and then stopped. Here, the temperature of the seawater was higher. He let the hut lie in his arms, and with his claws gently combed the tangled fur of the hut. Out of fear of cutting the hut's fur again, he had rubbed every claw on the rocks. They were now very soft and would definitely not harm the hut. The claws passed through the fur like a small comb. The hut made a sound of pleasure and unconsciously hit the surface of the water with its hind legs. The corner of Moju's mouth curled inadvertently. He combed from the belly to the back and neck. When he reached the cheek, he hesitated a little for fear of waking up the hut. Bai Huanqin didn't sleep much this time. She woke up. She didn't feel uncomfortable, but had woken up from hunger. It had been a day and a night since she last ate, and her stomach was protesting violently. She realized she was floating in the water. She turned around and wanted to dive in to hunt, but Moju, with quick eyes, grabbed her. "Don't stop me. I have to go get something to eat. I'm very hungry." But she had scarcely finished speaking when a fish was delivered to her mouth. Bai Huanqin was stunned for a moment, opened her mouth and bit the fish. After finishing eating, she saw the person floating behind her. "Did you catch the fish?" "Thank you, it was delicious." "What kind of fish is this?" Moju didn't answer her, but reached out and offered her more fish. Bai Huanqin was not rude, and ate 3 others in one go. The hunger eased somewhat. The wound on her head was much better than before, going from severe pain to mild pain. The same happened with other parts of her body. The only bad thing was a feeling of weakness all over her body. She couldn't lift her arms, and her brain still felt dizzy. She slowly rested the pad of her paw on her cheek, feeling an unprecedented warmth. So the cabins have a fever too. After feeling her face, Bai Huanqin began to look around. She found that the ceiling of the cave was different from before. It wasn't that place. The cave was very large, and there seemed to be light inside. What is that? Could it be a city? With that said, her body floated forward. Seeing this, Moju pulled her back. "You're so hurt, and you're still so curious, you can't go there. This is actually a giant volcano. The volcano hasn't erupted in many, many years. It's amazing that there's still a volcano in such a cold place. In fact, this volcano is not a dead mountain. There is still magma flowing in the deep sea. Because of this, the cave is warmer than the outside. This is just the outside of the cave. Further inland, you can reach the pool of magma. The cabins are used to living in areas of cold water, and it would be very hot and uncomfortable to go further inland." Bai Huanqin didn't know, but after Moju stopped her, she didn't try to float further inside. Instead, she turned her attention to him. "Have you been following me? If not, how could you find me so quickly?" Moju was about to shake his head when he suddenly felt a soft paw pad that quickly brushed against his lower abdomen. He was about to reach out to grab it when Bai Huanxin had already moved her body and floated to the other side. As she floated, she clutched her head with her claws and said faintly, "Oh, how dizzy I am! My claws are a little out of control. Tell me, am I seriously ill?" Bai Huanxin, as if nothing had happened, put her claws back on her cheek, rubbing them. "These abs are so firm, hard as a rock. It's a human feeling, not a fish. The structure of the mermaid is really strange. I just wonder if the fins on his waist are soft or smooth to the touch." After grooming her head and face, she found that the fur on her belly was especially soft, as if it had been combed with a comb, and she could vaguely see uniform footprints. It seemed that someone had specially combed her hair. She tilted her head curiously, staring at her belly for a moment, and then looked up at the mermaid. "Did you comb my hair?" Hearing this, Moju looked up at the top of the mountain, as if a monster had suddenly grown there. Bai Huanxin walked up to him again, pushed her belly up, and boldly grabbed his arm, which was beside her, and rubbed it on her own belly, as if she wanted to check it for herself. Moju immediately put his hand behind his back. Bai Huanxin was not upset that she missed it, but laughed. This confirmed her assumption. Moju frowned, and his brow became more and more frowned. His expression gradually became fierce. The smile on Bai Huanxin's face froze instantly, inexplicably feeling a trace of fear. She quickly backed away, sticking her body to the wall. Seeing her frightened and glued to the wall, the tip of Moju's ear moved a little, and slowly retracted his chest, returning to his previous expression. Seeing this, Bai Huanxin sneaked up on him. "I'm sorry, I just wanted to confirm if it was you who did my hair. Thank you, your technique is very good. Very gentle and clean." 2 threads of bubbles emerged from the surface of the water where the mermaid was. If Bai Huanxin could dive in and see it, she would realize that the mermaid's ear fins were wide open and moving, and her tail was constantly moving. This was clearly a sign of happiness. After finishing praising the mermaid, Bai Huanxin was reassured. She stepped aside and continued to comb her hair in silence, thinking of nothing else. Once she finished combing her hair, she felt hungry again. Those few fish were not large, barely enough to calm her stomach. Seeing the fish swimming underwater from time to time, she didn't dare to disturb the mermaid anymore, and decided to dive in herself to hunt for some food. Bai Huanxin deliberately avoided the mermaid's position, raised her hind legs, and dived into the water. But the water in the cave was much murkier than outside, and visibility was limited. Although many fish could be seen from above, when she went down, she could not see a single one. Bai Huanxin went round and round in confusion. She finally saw one, but the fish disappeared in an instant. Bai Huanxin could only return to the surface a little discouraged, planning to continue sleeping. If she slept, she wouldn't be hungry. Moju watched her difficult hunt and knew that she was hungry again. He waited for the little cabin to tell him she was hungry, but he waited and didn't hear that phrase. She wasn't even going to say it, she was just going to go to sleep on an empty stomach. Moju didn't know why he felt a little angry. He frowned again, and after hesitating for a while, he still softened and waved his claws. Bai Huanxin was about to close her eyes to sleep when she suddenly felt her claw touch something. Intrigued, she extended her claw, and the next second, a fish longer than her arm was alive and kicking in her hand. With her eyes wide open with surprise, she looked to the side and found that the mermaid was still in the water, not coming out, and had not approached her. He seemed to be asleep. So had the fish jumped into her arms on its own? How could it be something so ridiculous? Bai Huanxin, hungry, didn't think much. She whispered to the siren, "Are you asleep? Are you hungry? Do you want to eat this fish I have here?" Moju felt an overwhelming complexity. He never imagined that Bai Huanxin's first reaction would be to ask him if he wanted to eat. He didn't answer, just the water stirred up a little. Bai Huanxin asked again, and then didn't insist anymore. She opened her mouth and took a bite of the fish. This fish was fiery red, different from the ones the mermaid had given her before. At first glance, it looked like a tent, but it had no scales. When held, it was slippery, and the meat tasted peculiar, as if it were cooked, soft and sticky. Bai Huanxin narrowed her eyes and happily ate the whole fish. After eating, she only had a fish bone and some viscera left in her claws. Before, in the sea, I would just throw them into the sea, and these food scraps were a type of nutrient for phytoplankton and small fish and shrimp. Here, where there was nothing, if she threw them away, she thought they might smell bad. Bai Huanxin carefully moved to the wall and placed the fish bone on a protruding rock, saying in a low voice to the mermaid, "Can I leave it here?" Unexpectedly, the siren, who had not reacted before, suddenly poked his head out and nodded. Bai Huanqin was frightened and instantly gifted him with a beaming smile. Moju looked away silently, muttering something. Then, he looked at her again with a dark and deep gaze. After a moment of silence, he waved an arm and a fish appeared in his claw. He offered the fish to Bai Huanqin as if asking her if she wanted to eat more. Bai Huanqin undisguisedly swallowed hard. Of course I can eat more. She wasn't completely satisfied. She pressed her cheek with her claw, wanting to swim towards him, but she hesitated a little. Remembering that the mermaid had gotten angry still scared her a little. However, when she saw that face, the fright passed immediately. She came over and said politely, "Oh, shame on you," and quickly took the fish. For the first time, the siren made a sound. His voice was strangely deep. "Eat more to get fat, to be a food reserve." Bai Huanqin, who was opening her mouth to eat, raised her head suddenly. "The mermaid just spoke. What did you say?" The mermaid showed a mouth full of sharp teeth and quickly continued, "Fatten up to be a food reserve." Bai Huanqin's movement when eating stopped instantly. What? Bai Huanqin was stunned, really stunned. She thought she and the mermaid were friends. He had been peeking at her, sent her snacks and gifts, saved her in such a dangerous situation, and medicated and fed her. It turned out that it was all to fatten her up a little and eat her as a food reserve. No, since when do mermaids eat huts? If the mermaid was considered a human being, humans could eat anything but their fellow human beings, and even their fellow human beings if they were very hungry. So it was quite possible that this mermaid actually ate huts. Their characteristics were a little different from those of ordinary mermaids. Perhaps it was a mutated species. She thought about how bold she had been before to touch his claws and belly, and even to have felt something for him because of his beauty. Bai Huanqin almost wanted to praise herself for her boldness. She stared at the mermaid, and the food in her hands suddenly stopped being appetizing. Now I felt that that face was not only not beautiful, but also had a creepy feeling. Bai Huanqin inadvertently backed up to the edge of the cave. At first, she thought the mermaid was joking, but his expression was too serious and severe without the slightest trace of joking. Those fierce eyes were very scary. Now, the mermaid was the knife, and she was the meat. In addition, she was injured. If she did not run, she would only have to wait to be eaten. Bai Huanqin moved stealthily towards the entrance of the cave, pushed the wall with her paws, and sped up sharply, rushing into another cave. She looked around and found that there was another small cave entrance ahead. I didn't know where it was leading. Moju looked at her with that dazed, cautious, and frightened expression, and the corner of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. After the small hut came out of that cave, he followed it to the other side. Seeing him follow her, Bai Huanqin's escape velocity was even faster. She turned around, bit into the unfinished fish, and dove straight into the water, shooting out like a bullet. However, the further it went, the lower the temperature. When she swam to the exit and saw the scenery outside, she was immediately stunned. In the ice-blue seawater, huge white icebergs rose everywhere, and even the seawater was tinged a light blue. Her body temperature was dropping rapidly. It was too cold outside. Bai Huanqin felt that her nose was about to lose sensitivity. The wound on her head hurt again due to the cold of the water. Bai Huanqin stopped at the exit, looking back and forth. Behind her, the mermaid blocked the other end of the cave, as if waiting for her to fall into his trap. No wonder the mermaid did not chase her. She was sure she couldn't go far. Bai Huanqin continued to swim a little longer, but it didn't take long for her to get lost. Everywhere there were icebergs, like a labyrinth, and I couldn't find the way out. Bai Huanqin could only stop to think. If I go out, I might not even find my way and end up coming back halfway. At least, here I have that jazz mermaid with me. If I think about something, maybe I have a chance to survive. Do mermaids not like cabin fur? I don't think the mermaid can resist my fur. A living hut is much more interesting than a dead one, and I'm so thin that my flesh doesn't taste good at all. After understanding this, Bai Huanqin began to swim back. Compared to when she came out, this time her speed was much, much slower. It was very difficult for her to advance. But however slow it was, the road had an end. Bai Huanqin finally returned to the cave. The temperature of the water returned to normal, and the stiffness in her body slowly disappeared. She lay down at the entrance of the cave, deciding not to look at the mermaid, and began to eat the fish in her mouth calmly. Bai Huanqin, inexplicably, had the illusion that she was eating her last meal. When the fishbone was spit out, Bai Huanqin lay on her back and closed her eyes, her claws obediently on her belly, her hind legs together, and her tail placed in the slit of her hind legs. "I'm fine, you can come. It hurts a little. Eats quickly. If you can swallow me whole, all the better. My hairs are hard to chew." Moju's gaze fell on the face of the small hut, which lacked color on its body. His claws gently rested, massaging the fur on the neck and belly of the hut. Bai Huanqin waited, feeling the mermaid's hand on her fur, thinking that perhaps he was thinking about where to start eating. She had eaten very well lately, and had gained quite a bit of meat in her belly. But the meat on her waist and back must have been the fattest and tastiest. But after the mermaid stroked her entire fur, she didn't feel any pain, but heard an indistinct and inexplicable sound. This was the last sound Bai Huanqin heard before she lost consciousness. After the little cabin fell asleep, Moju lay down beside her, applied the medicine to her wounds once more, and then gently combed her fur. "It feels so good. Once you touch it, it's hard to forget." Actually, the food reserve thing, it was a lie for the cabin. Moju also found out for the first time that he had such a naughty side. But the hut's reaction to his actions left him speechless, not knowing how to react. He just wanted to quickly divert his attention. But this surely scared the cabin. Moju avoided the wound on the hut's head and gently rubbed his forehead, emitting a soft and prolonged song. Bai Huanqin slept soundly and had a good sleep. She was so happy in her dream. Although when she woke up, she no longer remembered what she had dreamed, that feeling of happiness still lingered in her heart, making her lips unable to help but curl into a smile. However, this smile froze at the sight of the mermaid standing next to her, staring at her. She hurriedly backed away. "Didn't you eat me?" Bai Huanqin felt herself. She was not missing arms or legs. The most surprising thing was that the wounds no longer hurt. Not only did they not hurt, but the weakness and tiredness before bed had disappeared. She felt fresh and very comfortable. "I'm fine, my wounds don't hurt. Did you give me medicine again just now? Are you trying to scare me on purpose?" Bai Huanqin was stunned to see the mermaid nod. I had been cheating on her. Thinking of this, the corner of Bai Huanqin's mouth curled slightly. "So you know how to make jokes. And very realistic. You really scared me. You were terrifying with that angry face." After saying this, her smile grew bigger. "Thank you for healing my wounds." Moju emitted a deep from his throat, very weak, but Bai Huanqin heard it. Her eyes shone, brighter than the stars in the sky. Moju took a deep breath, turned his head to the side so as not to look at her, and tried again to dive into the water. Unexpectedly, Bai Huanqin grabbed it. "Did you secretly touch my fur while I was sleeping? Was it with this hand? Why are the nails on both your hands different? Did you polish them on purpose?" Moju wanted to take out his fingers so that he wouldn't see them, but the little hut held him very tightly. With her two small claws, she grabbed his hand and brought it to her chest. Moju could only look away, pretending not to have heard anything. "Polished so smoothly it sure took you a long time. If you want to touch my fur, you can tell me directly. You saved my life, you can touch my fur however you want." With that said, Bai Huanqin even puffed out her chest with an air of nobility. Moju's arm, which was being hugged, moved even closer to his chest, almost completely sinking into the fur. The tips of his ears and the fins on the sides of his waist, even his tail, couldn't help but open and move. Bai Huanqin fully observed his reaction and couldn't help but think to herself, "I don't think so. Could a mermaid resist the fur of a hut?" Moju, a little nervous, withdrew his hand and plunged straight into the water, disappearing. Bai Huanqin was stunned for a moment, searching around the surface of the water, but she didn't find anyone. What a shy and kind coward. Bai Huanqin hummed a small song, circling on the surface of the water a few times, planning to connect to the internet for a while waiting for the mermaid to return. But as soon as she opened the screen, she received many message notifications. 99% of these messages were concerned about her safety. Unlike last time, this time there had been no news of her for several days. The number of submarines in the rescue team had increased to 20, and even 2 other neighboring cities had each sent 2 submarines to help, conducting an exhaustive search to find her. The news of the last 2 days also dealt with this rescue. Until now, the body of the hut had not been found, and although the chance of survival was only 0.1%, people expected to see a miracle. After reading the messages, Bai Huanqin also visited the news websites and live broadcast rooms. Almost everything was prayer, praying for her safety. She couldn't help but smile bitterly, and she was also moved. How fortunate she was to have come into this world, become a cabin, and be so loved and missed by so many people. Bai Huanqin walked over to the entrance of the cave leading outside and took a look. The rescue team was still searching outside. If she asked for help, she would be rescued quickly. But if she did, she would have to separate herself from the mermaid, and the mermaid's home would also be exposed. Honestly, I was a little hesitant. Although they hadn't communicated, she and Mo Jiu had the same thought. They didn't plan to leave for the time being. However, she had to report that she was safe. Bai Huanqin replied to people who cared about her, especially the rescue team. "I'm still alive. I'm in a very safe place now. They don't need to keep looking for me. Thank you. You have worked hard." After answering the messages, Bai Huanqin opened the live broadcast room and posted a message saying that she was safe. The rescue team, upon receiving the message, was surprised at first, thinking it wasn't her, and then became excited. They jumped a mermaid dance in the water. Captain Peng Duo, whom Bai Huanqin had seen last time, quickly asked, "Little Hut, where are you now? We'll come and pick you up. Are you hurt?" "I'm fine. I'm not hurt. They don't need to come pick me up. I don't want to go out yet. When I want to leave, I'll get in touch with you." Xiong Duo was excited again upon receiving the answer, but the other team members noticed something. "She says she doesn't want to go out. Where is she? Are there other mermaids or animals with her? Is she captive?" A group of mermaids let their imaginations run wild, imagining a fantasy story in which the cabin was saved by a passing mermaid, but was later imprisoned by her, threatened not to leave, and the cabin could only call for help in this veiled way. The more they thought, the more solemn their faces became. Thinking of the soft and adorable cabin suffering such abuse, tears almost fell to their eyes. "This is definitely the opposite of what you mean. We must rescue the cabin. Yes, we should definitely rescue her." Bai Huanqin didn't know how they had imagined the situation. After answering the messages, she turned off the screen and went to find the siren. He had been in hiding for a long time, and she didn't know where he had gone. Just as she thought this, the mermaid magically appeared, not from the inner cave, but from the cold sea outside. He carried a lot of things in his arms. Mo Jiu placed a bunch of sea urchins, shells, and shrimp on the stone platform. He looked at Bai Huanqin and then stepped back into the water. As soon as Bai Huanqin saw these things, she jumped a meter high. Before Mo Jiu disappeared again, she jumped up to him and gave him a big hug. Her hair, claws, and entire body stuck to the mermaid. Mo Jiu, helpless, he raised his hands. His neck, face, chest, and back were all hairy and itchy. This posture was too intimate, even more intimate than when he was holding the hut before. He pursed his lips tightly and let his arms fall gently, circling the hut. "So you went out to get me food. How did you know I wanted to eat this? Why didn't you bring me with you?" With that said, she rubbed her fleshy pads on the mermaid's back for a moment. Before Mo Jiu could react, Bai Huanqin pounced on the pile of food. She didn't know how long the mermaid had been looking to bring in so much food. There were shrimp and sea urchins. Shrimp were special, salty, stretchy, and delicious polar shrimp. The sea urchins also tasted better than the ones she had caught herself. Bai Huanqin ate several at once before remembering that the mermaid was still on the side. She offered him the last shrimp. "Do you want to eat? This is delicious." With that, she raised her claw, and the food piled up next to his mouth. The shrimp was pressed to his lips. Mo Jiu couldn't refuse. He could only open his mouth and swallow the shrimp. Bai Huanqin withdrew her claw and asked, "Was it delicious?" After saying this, she carefully left him a portion of each food. Mo Jiu didn't plan to eat, but the little hut stared at him, as if she wouldn't let go if he didn't eat. Mo Jiu didn't know how the hut he had rescued had become so bold. Before, she had been frightened by his cold face and fled in a hurry, and now she could almost climb on his head. At the insistence of the hut, he ate the shells that Bai Huanqin had broken with her own legs on her belly, and a crab that she had carefully opened for him. The mermaid couldn't actually chew the shell crab like the hut, but Bai Huanqin didn't know. She watched Mo Jiu chew the entire crab's leg, making a crunching sound, and the pieces filled the pool. "When my wounds heal, I will go hunting with you." The mermaid looked at her. He touched her head, indicating that she would recover from her injuries. Bai Huanqin, lying on the surface of the water, looked at him and asked him something she had kept in her heart for a long time. "What's your name? We've known each other for so long, and I still don't know what this mermaid is called." "My name is Bai Huanqin, I told you before. You can also call me Kin." The mermaid glanced at her out of the corner of his eye. His long, jet black hair moved with him. "Mo Jiu! Mo Jiu! What a cute name. Cute like you." Moju was stunned to hear that, and the next second, he dived back into the water. Bai Huanqin didn't know what to say about his tendency to dive into water and hide every now and then. I hadn't done anything excessively intimate yet, and I was already so shy. What if Bai Huanqin decided that it would be better to disturb the mermaid less in the future? Although it was fun to see him shy, if he was always hiding, what was the point of not being able to see him? Not only did the mermaid make her feel crazy about his looks, but his personality also fit perfectly with her tastes. He was literally the mermaid of her dreams. She had never considered whether a cabin and a mermaid could be together. Before, when she researched online, she discovered that some female huts left their tribes and came to the mermaid cities, living a life of luxury and being worshipped by many mermaids. It seemed to her that it was not obligatory here to mate with the same species. As long as there was true love, any species could be together, as long as they could resist the instinct of reproduction. What was engraved in the animal instinct, in addition to hunting, was reproduction. When the mating period came, the males would return to the tribe. Bai Huanqin didn't care about it. After all, she was human at heart and had some self-control. This time, the mermaid didn't hide in the water for long. Bai Huanqin saw him come out and said, "I watched the news today. The rescue team is looking for me. I informed them that I am safe, but it may not be enough, so I'd like to do a live stream again. Can this be done here? If not, I'll go live streaming." Moju poked his head out of the water. His dark eyes stared at her silently for a moment, as if he was thinking about something. After a while, he said, "I'll take you." With that, he extended an arm and hugged her. Moju took her straight out of the cave to the outside. On their way out, they were immediately enveloped by the freezing cold. Bai Huanqin couldn't help but curl up in the mermaid's arms, sticking completely to his body. This time, there were no other thoughts. I just wanted to quickly avoid the cold. Sensing the movement of the hut, Moju accelerated sharply, swimming towards the surface of the sea. It was noon, the sun was shining brightly, and its rays fell directly on the water. The sea was calm, bright, and sparkling. The huge waves of the previous days had completely disappeared. Bai Huanqin turned her head and looked at Moju in front of her. With the sun behind him, she could see stars shining on his cheeks. It was like a luminous body, beautiful to the point of being unreal. After a moment, she looked away and began to observe the surroundings. There were no icebergs here, only the immensity of the sea. Nothing else. "Live stream," Moju said, and dove into the water. Bai Huanqin knew that he hadn't gone far, that he was still floating beside her, so she calmed down. She fixed her fur, looked at herself on the screen for a moment, and realizing that the wounds on her body would not be seen and nothing strange would be noticed, opened the live broadcast. This broadcast was so sudden that many fans, upon receiving the notification, still couldn't believe it. Not long ago, the news said that the cabin had responded, reporting that it was safe, but that was just audio and text, and it could be fake. Without a video of her face, many mermaids refused to believe it was true. Jin Shan was already anxious, hadn't slept in days, immersed himself in the internet looking for news, and had even spent money to research with the rescue team. If he hadn't been banned from entering the waters of the northern city, he would have gone in person. To this end, Jin Shan had even recruited a group of people and founded the Bai Huanqin exclusive fan club for cabins, with more than 1 million members. The fan club created a website with all of Bai Huanqin's images. The moment they received the notification of the live stream, the fan club members quickly gathered in the broadcast room and posted several promotions on social media, announcing that the cabin was live streaming. Bai Huanqin looked at her tens of millions of followers with some disbelief. She had only live streamed a few times in total. Aside from the last time it lasted an hour, the rest hadn't exceeded half an hour. And yet, so many people loved her. She felt a little pressure. There was nothing special about it that so many people wanted it. It was just an ordinary, unimportant little cabin. Although she was considered quite cute compared to the various cats that were most popular in the country, Bai Huanqin felt that they couldn't be compared at all. Not only could it not be compared, but it was far behind. However, she couldn't understand the aesthetics of others, but she could respect it. She had to work hard to make her taste worthwhile. Then, Bai Huanqin immediately put on a smiling face and opened the live broadcast. "Hello everyone, how long have I not seen you? The last 2 days I have been dodging the tsunami, and only now have time to watch the news and the messages. I'm so sorry for responding late and worrying you." With that, she walked over to the screen and blew a kiss. Moju, who was waiting for her not far away, was watching the live feed from the hut from another angle. When he saw her blow a kiss to the screen, he felt an unexplained irritation, This feeling came for no reason, but he felt a little unhappy. Thanks to the protective suit provided by the rescue team last time, I did not suffer any injuries. Now I'm in a very safe place, and everything is fine here. The rescue team went to great lengths to search for me. They should return soon and rest well. After thanking them, she continued, "Having encountered 2 tsunamis in such a short time, it seems that having no life experience is not good for living alone outside. Once I settle down, I will consider looking for a city to live in. Thank you again for your concern. If I have time, I'll do a live stream again. For now, that's it. Until next time!" After saying it all in one go, Bai Huanqin closed the live broadcast. She had reported that she was safe, but the mermaids and other species watching the transmission were left in thought. For the little cabin, what city do you mean by looking for a city to live in and settling down? Which city will be lucky enough to host the small cabin? What kind of sincerity do they need to move the hut? Most people focused on what Bai Huanqin said about settling in a city. But a small part of the mermaids, such as the cabin fan club and the people of the rescue team, they watched the cabin feed several times and captured the moment she smiled out of the camera during the broadcast. The captain of the rescue team, Peng Duo, and the team members gathered. He pointed to the healing smile of the hut and said excitedly, "You're looking out of the camera, right? Is there anyone else by your side? Is it the person who saved her? We really got it right." The team members looked at the captain, whose face was reddened, and patted him on the shoulder. "Captain, the cabin seems fine. We don't need to keep looking for her, do we?" Peng Duo looked at them coldly. "Don't you want to see the hut every day?" Peng Duo kept watching the replay of the broadcast, thinking which mermaid hero had captured the heart of the little hut. After finishing the live broadcast, Bai Huanqin slapped her chest, and with a slight movement, she slapped the surface of the sea, propelling her body into a perfect big circle. I hadn't been out for several days, and I felt like a lot of time had passed. This feeling of floating freely was also something I hadn't experienced for a long time. Mojiu, on the other hand, felt a little uncomfortable with such an open ocean and no cover. He remained submerged underwater, refusing to come out. When he saw her, Bai Huanqin swam towards him. With her claws, she touched his hair that floated on the surface of the water like algae, and mischievously used it like algae, pulling the hair and wrapping it around herself. The mermaid's hair was very, very long. When Bai Huanqin was about to wrap it, Moju pulled her sharply under the water. Bai Huanqin, next to the mermaid, asked in confusion, "Why do all mermaids have such long hair? Is it to look good?" Moju glanced at her sideways and replied 2 words, "Hunting." Mermaids originally had hair so long to hunt. Some experiments have shown that fish are not only attracted to the smell of blood, but also to objects that move. Many fish like to eat zooplankton, so fish tend to hunt for moving objects. For this reason, mermaids tied their hair in small knots, using them as worms to fish. Now, naturally, they didn't need such a rudimentary hunting method, but the mermaids' tradition of wearing their hair long had been maintained. Of course, many mermaids were not satisfied with monotonous long hair, and they cut it short or made all kinds of strange hairstyles. Bai Huanqin remembered the short-haired mermaids she had seen in pictures, and imagined Moju in that style. She praised him. "Your long hair is beautiful. You're the most beautiful long-haired mermaid I've ever seen." Moju didn't understand why he was suddenly praising him. He turned his head away from looking at her and picked up his speed a little. Bai Huanqin quickly fell behind. She smiled, the corners of her lips curvy. Moju's reaction whenever he was praised was adorable, making her want to see him embarrassed again and again. Seeing that the distance between them was getting bigger and bigger, and the mermaid's shadow was almost merging with the seawater, Bai Huanqin finally became anxious and quickly shouted, "Slower! You're too fast. When I can't reach you, you treat me like your sweet beloved and hug me. But now you hug me, and then you pull me." As soon as she finished screaming, she realized that the siren had accelerated even more, disappearing completely. Bai Huanqin was completely stunned. "It's gotten out of hand. I shouldn't have said that at this point. The other party has slipped away." Bai Huanqin, somewhat annoyed, scratched her fur near her mouth and hurriedly followed him. But once the mermaid disappeared, it was truly gone. She felt like she had swum for 20 minutes and hadn't seen his shadow again. Bai Huanqin couldn't help but surface and look around. She realized that she had returned to the Arctic Circle. In front of it was a large expanse of floating ice, and on the edges of the ice were some smaller pieces. On these white ice formations, something seemed to be lying down. moving. Just at the moment she stuck her head out, those white animals seemed to notice her and made a sound in her direction. The sound was like humans saying, "Ah, ah," but with a childlike twist. Bai Huanqin endured the icy sensation of the seawater and swam a little further forward. As she got closer, she discovered that those white lumps were all seals. They were seal pups. At that moment, the seal mother was not around. There were only 3 cubs lying on the ice, looking around. At that moment, a small seal pup moved towards her. The seal lifted its chin and barked at her twice. Her little white, furry paws were on the sides of her body, and she raised her head to look at her with big black eyes, trying to get closer to the edge of the floating ice. The fluffy fur made Bai Huanqin want to pet him. She instantly forgot about Moju, forgot the fact that she was lost, and covered her mouth wanting to scream. What is it to be cute? This is being cute. What am I compared to a seal pup? In addition, their coat is thick and soft. Why don't mermaids like seals? In fact, it's not that mermaids don't like seals, but that the lifespan of seal cuteness is relatively short. After half a month, their white fur falls off and turns into a short coat with spots. In addition, there are many seals, with a huge population. They can be seen at any time, unlike cabins, which are so rare and maintain their cuteness from start to finish. This is also an important reason why mermaids love cabins. Bai Huanqin didn't understand it, and at that moment she didn't want to understand it. She just lay on the edge of the floating ice, interacting with the little seal pup. But she didn't realize that the floating ice was a bit thin. As her claw caught on the ice, a cracking sound could be heard at the edge of the ice. Then, a loud, deep growl came from behind. The sound was so loud that it frightened Bai Huanqin, causing her to fall into the water. She turned and saw a seal much larger than her, with gray-black spots, charging furiously toward her. "Hell! The mother of the seal pups has discovered me!" Bai Huanqin hurriedly dodged, feeling guilty. But the seal was very fast and did not have time to dodge it. It looked like he was about to bump into her. Bai Huanqin still had unhealed wounds, and if she was beaten, the wounds would surely open again.